politician, right?
And Donald
he's
Trump,
just rubbish
and Trump, you know...
and Trump is a good
everybody's
politician.
it's outrageous he's cleared all those people from January the 6th, but everybody's missed out the fact that the ex-president cleared his entire family preemptively, which to me smacks that they could be in trouble.
He's cleared people that no one's even said are in trouble.
No.
That to me is really weird. Hey, Mickey Smithers in Wyoming, you got a pardon. Why? Well, you might commit a crime next week.
You go from being the most powerful man in the world to a helicopter and you're gone. I know, we've hit the time. He's over.
Sitting on a beach in Hawaii now. Couldn't give a hoot. That's it from us.
He doesn't know he's there, though.
On the other side of the news at 4, which is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Just gone 4 o'clock. We are live with Drive. That rhymes. This is Jeremy Kyle on Talk, of course, the home of common sense and free speech. The home of common sense. The phrase that the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump, yesterday said, a golden age for America, and it's all based on common sense. Don't you wish we had common sense in the United Kingdom? There's only 2 stories in town, my friends. They are, of course, the appalling atrocities and the fallout of that Southport killer. I mean, honestly, what Axel Rubicana did in itself is heinous. 3 young girls taken at a young age, a man who bought a knife on Amazon, a man who was apparently... allegedly or factually, we've no idea. I think I know what I want to say, but there we go. He was somebody at Prevent, which is his government body aimed at dealing with terrorist threats. He was told about to them 3 times. Nothing was done. Today, our own Prime Minister put him up against Donald Trump, was hauled in front of the national media and admitted in a rather dreary... He just doesn't get the pulse, does he? He knew about the Southport killer's extremist views and terror links. He denies a cover-up. He said that he couldn't make the information he knew public because it would have prejudiced Rudikana's trial, denying justice to the families of the 3 murdered children. However, when it comes out that this terrorist programme, Prevent, knew about him and their judgment he was all right, When asked if he knew in the aftermath of the tragedy, Starmer said, yes, I knew, but it wouldn't have been right to disclose those details. Do you think that was right? Do you think he could have said more? There have been other examples in this country where people have said this is a terrorist situation, this was a terrorist attack. Surely everything that came from Southport, the media started thinking it was an illegal migrant. You know the story. There were riots. Keir Starmer was able to stand up and say, that's the far right, and do quite rightly what he had to do to get rid of those people off the streets. If he'd been factual at that moment and said, look, I can't say any more other than that is, we believe, terrorist-based, that would have actually dealt with many of the problems. I would love to hear what you think of it. One of the most important people in this story is Nigel Farage. He has accused the Prime Minister of hiding behind contempt of court arguments. Nigel Farage yet to speak about it, but he will be live and exclusive on Drive Time at 5 o'clock. He just landed from the United States of America at Stansted Airport. He will be live on Talk in little over an hour. What do you want me to ask Nigel Farage? Every time Reform have the gonads, excuse my French, to actually stand up and say what's going on, whether it was the Manchester police being, you know, the thing where they were told they shouldn't have beaten up those two thugs. They were dealt with the police quite quickly. The thugs won't. Reform brought that up. Nigel Farage brought this up at the time. He was laughed out of the House of Commons. He said there's got to be more than this. He was blamed for this. He will be on this show. For me, the Starmer thing, right, was just... and I'm delighted to be joined. First guest today, a legend, Russell Quirk, political commentator. I say, mate, Ian Collins just used a fantastic word to us in the handover. He doesn't seem to get the pulse of this country. When you put him this morning, so much so I had to ring Mike. I was in the car. I was like, what? Against Donald Trump yesterday. That's what we've got.
Well, what a contrast. Two contrasts. A contrast between Donald Trump and people are saying the best inauguration speech ever on the basis of righting the wrongs of the last 4 years of the Democrat wokeism. And then, yes, wooden Starmer this morning talking like a robot at us like this with regard to, I think, look, he's rather fake attempts to kind of feign concern over this. I don't think he seems particularly, or is particularly concerned.
I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that he's that Director of Public Prosecution's persona, excuse my French. Well, but let me play a couple of clips, Russ, for people maybe just tuning in who haven't heard them. This was Keir Starmer on why the Southport murders are a wake-up call. Before you play it, not we're going to do something about this particular case, we've made mistakes. This is what we'll learn for the future. Let's have a listen.
The tragedy of the Southport killings must be a line in the sand for Britain. We must make sure the names of those 3 young girls are not associated with the vile perpetrator, but instead with a fundamental change in how Britain protects its citizens and its children. In pursuit of that, we must, of course, ask and answer difficult questions, questions that should be far-reaching, unburdened by cultural or institutional sensitivities, and driven only by the pursuit of justice. That is what we owe the families.
So why wasn't it possible for our Prime Minister, newly in the job, before a lot of the mistakes that he's made and has made became apparent, why did he not, or was he not able to stand up in the aftermath of those horrific attacks when those 3 young girls were taken, murdered in cold blood by a man with, it seems, terrorist links? I mean, some of the information coming out about him, he bought a terrorist handbook, which you can now get from bestsellers. He bought a knife on Amazon. He'd been prevented. A father had stopped him from going to a former school the week before the attack. Why would the Prime Minister not have stood up a year ago, 6 months, and said, listen, this is a terror-related attack. I can't give any more, but can say what I can say. He didn't, but he did stand up and say when the riots took place, because people were making assumptions online, I'm not condoning that, he did say this is far-right extremism and sent the militia onto the streets to get all these people. So I never got that.
Yeah, so look, we all know and accept that there are certain rules around contempt of court.
Sure.
Of course, you know, you cannot, particularly those of us in the media, say certain things that are speculative that might prejudice the case by way of what a jury may hear and therefore think and decide. However, there is nothing stopping, and we've seen this many, many times in the past. Nothing's stopping the authorities telling us the facts. So the fact that, ricin or an attempt to make ricin was found, the fact that this individual was in possession of an Al-Qaeda manual, we can then, as an intelligent public, join the dots ourselves. The big problem here, of course, apart from the atrocities themselves, and of course how this monster was allowed to carry them out, having been reported not once, not twice, but 3 times to prevent. There is that, but it's the vacuum of information. Not just the vacuum of information in terms of what the government and the authorities decided not to tell us. Of course, then you get speculation.
Of course.
And people being concerned, off the back of lots and lots of other extremist activity, frankly, they start to become concerned about themselves. Is this something that's going to become more widespread?
And that's what
is this an Al-Qaeda play in terms of there's 50 of these monsters that are about to become active? This
is my thing about Starmer and the Pulse and judging when you put him against Trump. Maybe there is a new threat to Britain. Maybe there's a lot of kids with screwed up brains who read Al-Qaeda manuals and think that they're going to change the world by going in and murdering young innocent girls or school children or whatever. But for me, this is a little bit too late. I don't understand. And please help me out. Phone the show, 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. Start your message as ever with the word talk. He talks about smashing the gangs. He talks about stopping the boats. I've always thought that he's reactive rather than proactive. I would have taken the bull by the horns and gone, this is an example of a terrorist situation, and one of the first things I'm going to do as Prime Minister is I'm going to get this dealt with. No, he's just a lawyer, isn't he? He's an uninspiring lawyer.
He is reactive, not proactive, but also he's just not authentic.
No,
when
he's
I
not.
listen to him talking about the issues in Britain, bear in mind he gets those issues the wrong way round. The fact, as we've said, he characterises ordinary common sense protest as far-right thuggery. He is not convincing. I've said before, I do not think this man has empathy. He hasn't got empathy for people or for the country. I think he's in a process.
When I watched Donald Trump, and we did it on Drive, we'll go straight to the phones in a sec, I thought that man, like him or loathe him, and I've had all the lefties saying, oh, he's done this, he's been inappropriate. He genuinely loves his country, and he genuinely wants the people of that country to be safer, better off, and have an understanding of their standing as a country in the world. My Prime Minister, do I have to say that? I don't think he's proud to be British. Straight to the phone lines. Don't go anywhere. Steve's in Glasgow. Steve, Russell and I are here. What you got on this?
Good evening, gents. How are you?
Yeah, good. What you got?
Anyway, I listened to Sir Keith on the radio with Mike this morning, just before I got out of my car, and it's brooding me all day. Who does he think he's talking to? He's talking more garbage and more lies. What was there to withhold? This was not a 50-50 case where we didn't know about the evidence. Everybody knew who'd done that. People witnessed it. It was a cut and dry case. I don't understand why he's coming out with this nonsense.
Well, I'll give you something that I talked about earlier in the office, and somebody said to me that's a bit conspiratorial. But, on the day that Yvette Cooper today announces a public inquiry into the Southport attack, this government has refused an inquiry into the rape gangs who have created heinous carnage across this country for years. You could argue, could you not, Russell Quirk, that Keir Starmer, in saying nothing, gave himself political capital to say when people were causing trouble, that's far-right extremism, and be the man that he was. But that's using... listen, people will say I'm making that up. I don't know. But you can only say 7 months later you've told us what you should have told us at that moment, and a lot of what happened would not have happened.
I mentioned just now two sharp contrasts. That was going to be my second, the sharp contrast between... he talked today a lot about, getting justice and finding answers for the parents of the victims. Well, what about finding answers for the parents of the victims of those rape gangs, indeed? So there is an absolute hypocrisy there. But I would go further in terms of that speculation, and this isn't, again, conspiratorial. I'm afraid, look, we are dealing with politicians here and politicians' advisors. I tell you what I think is going on here insofar as the inquiries. He's rushed to want an inquiry on the Southport killings. I think we need to wait in terms of the terms of reference, which will be very, very important, because I think those terms of reference will guide whoever runs that inquiry in the places that the government want them to go to, but not to the places, i.e. what Keir Starmer perhaps knew in the aftermath and Yvette Cooper, not to go there. But the difference is, I think what Keir Starmer will do is try and pin the whole Southport issue on the failure of the security services under a Conservative government. That's politics point number one. The reason that the Labour Party don't want a probe into what's happening in terms of the or has happened and will continue to happen in terms of the grooming gangs is because although that was under the Conservatives' watch, we all know that predominantly that was enabled by areas that are predominantly Labour controlled.
Completely
Labour councillors, Labour councils. So what he's effectively saying is, I'm not going to probe anything that might actually dob in the Labour Party and destroy it based on their complicity, but if there's something I can score points with the Conservatives on, i.e. Southport, I'll do that. It's pure politics.
Steve, back to you very quickly. Did you... When you put, I was in the car this morning as well. I actually phoned Mike on his mobile and said I was listening to a man who to me is just dreary and uninspiring, and I based that just anyway. But of course, I was sat here when we played the whole of Donald Trump's inauguration speech. Whether you love or loathe Donald Trump, the difference is palpable, my friend, isn't it?
Night and day. But the problem is, Jeremy, this man is talking down to us all the time. Fine. So today, well, now he understands we are allowed to be angry about it. But 7 months ago, we were right folks.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Thank you so much. That was Steve in Glasgow. We'll go to Basingstoke. Matt on the phones already. Simon, you're on Talk Drive. Russell Quirk who's with me. What you got?
Well, I just think that this whole issue of sub judice is a bit of a joke. Do you remember the 2017 Finsbury Park attack?
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing any hesitation in calling that A, a terrorist attack, and B, being it was undertaken by someone who was white. It was a far-right attack. I would have had far more respect for Keir Starmer if he'd have stood up today and said, the people in Prevent who made those 3 decisions that allowed this man to continue to walk the streets no longer have a job today.
Well, you see, for me, I'm like with you and with Russell, and I can't get out of my head. I thought about it all day. I can't get out of my head that it gave him political capital to say that's far-right extremism on the streets. This has been, created online, and I'm going to crush that. Whereas if you'd come out and you'd said to the British public, who, by the way, are far more engaged. I know people are hacked off with politicians, but I think the British people have got to a point, be it because of COVID, the cost of living crisis, immigration, where they know what they think and they have an opinion. And on stations like this, they're not afraid to say that anymore. Starmer, I think, is playing politics. I think Russell's right. But I think he's underestimating. Now, he was dragged out today. And as you quite rightly just said, he's done it 7 months later. Any person, I go back to Ian Collins' comment, any person with their finger on the political pulse would have done it at that moment because, as you said, Si, it's been done before. Simon's right, Russ, isn't he?
Yeah, and also, you play back that speech this morning, that very wooden,
God, not again.
Very wooden scripted speech. There are a couple of other things that we should take note from it. First of all, he admitted, probably accidentally, that he was the one that drew a line under and corrected the failings of the CPS on rape gangs. Now, he said that to try and take the credit for fixing the wrongs of the past. But we should realise and remember that at that point he had been the Director of Public Prosecutions, the man in charge of the CPS for 4 years. So what is effectively admitted there, Jeremy, is that for 4 years he was a failed leader, allowing this ignorance, this sweeping under the carpet on his watch. The other very quick thing is listening to that speech, as he was kind of 5 minutes into it, he said something and began to say something that I think is very, very sinister indeed. He started to turn the speech into something that related to the censoring of social media. So if you listen to it very carefully, what he starts to say is, look, there's too much vile bile and nastiness online with social media. We need to do something about it. I suspect he is going to use the Southport murder situation and criminality and the conviction of this monster. I think he's going to use it as a catalyst to now say that we need to censor social media and social media platforms.
Simon, can I put the question to you? Do you think that, and some people will disagree with me for this, not bothered, do you think that he wasn't as open and as transparent as he was today, 7 months later at the time, because it then became obvious that he could jump on what he calls far-right extremism, hoover them up with police who suddenly appeared from nowhere in courts that were full and jails that were full, and get the whole thing done in 24 hours and show that he was the strong man? I think he politicised the Southport murders, absolutely.
He certainly did, but I would I would say this to Sir Keir Starmer and to our entire elite. You keep putting the pressure on the British people the way you're doing, and you will pay a price that you do not expect. I mean, in Basingstoke, there are 3 hotels full of migrants. My flat, I live in a block of flats. That we have an area where we store, where we basically put our rubbish, which has a code to enter it. There is someone staying in there. And I've contacted the police and they will not come to see. So literally I have a migrant living in where I put my rubbish. That is how bad it is. And Basingstoke's a wealthy town. How long will people put up with this? And if they keep on trying to restrict our speech, they will literally cause the very situation they're trying to stop. And I strongly suspect that if they get out with their lives, they will be far more fortunate than they deserve.
I couldn't agree more. Simon in Basingstoke, thank you. Do please keep your calls coming. We'll get as many on as possible. That's the only 2 stories in town. The Southport murders. Horrendous. I mean, horrendous. This Alex Rueda-Picana admitting yesterday before it went to trial, which, yes, I understand, means that the families don't have to go through the horror. They still have to live with the fact that these 3 young girls' lives were ended by a thug and a terrorist who had a terrorist manual that you can get. I mean, listen, it was listed on the websites of major booksellers, The Telegraph found. The text titled Military Studies in the Jihad Against Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda training manual, was published by a CIA psychiatrist in 2004 and serves as a tradecraft manual for terrorists. That was available. Hold on a second. He could buy a zombie knife on Amazon. Prevent the government's anti-terrorism body was told about him 3 times. They did nothing. This is like Sarah Sharif. This is like the social services being told about this poor girl and ignore it until she was beaten to death by her appalling piece of whatever that's her father. It's all well and good for Keir Starmer to stand up and say, Russ, and pontificate. This is what's happening, terrorism in this country. I think this could have happened a long, long time ago, but I'll tell you what Simon says more than any call I've had for months. They want to be very careful about the British people. When I say, and people like you say this, they go, oh, what are you doing, stirring up? No, I'm telling you the truth. People that you wouldn't believe, who have never said boo to a goose, are fed up to the back teeth of what's happening in this country. And somebody, somewhere, I believe, and I hope it is Nigel Farage, who'll be on this show in 45 minutes, are going to grab the consciousness of the British people like Donald J. Trump has done and lead this country out of this mess. I genuinely believe that.
Well, and yes, and look, how Starmer behaves is nothing short of tyrannical.
Yeah.
You know, it is...
and deaf. It's deaf.
You know, he will put ideology, party and votes before Britain. He's clearly doing that. And then if you question him, he censors you or puts you in prison. We've seen that before in the Soviet Union, in the run-up to what then became Nazi Germany in the 1930s. I mean, that might seem as if I'm exaggerating, but they are the ingredients. They are exactly the same things that were displayed
I can take that the guy... OK, is a lawyer. And after the...
You say lawyer or...
Well, whatever.
Liar.
A lying lawyer. I can accept all of that. And I can accept the people who would criticise Donald J. Trump, right? But what I am talking about is understanding the fervent anger that is everywhere across this country, not just here, by the way, the far right, as you like to label anybody who disagrees with your left-wing ideology. Every day, working men and women who are at the back of the bloody queue, behind immigrants, behind terrorists, behind... That man just said it. People work all their lives, and I think the British people are saying, we've had enough of being treated
He has
like this.
no idea of the real world,
no,
the real Britain, real people.
No.
He's never been surrounded by them. Obviously, he's a man that's been in the public sector pretty much all of his career, from what I can see. So he doesn't understand the public. I'm not sure he cares much about the public. I think that's been displayed left, right and centre. And all it will do, yes, is give rise to a platform for others, including Nigel Farage, that will just take advantage of the fact that Keir Starmer seems to be breaking Britain even more than the last lot did.
Could not agree more. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. This is JK on Drive. We're coming back. And don't forget, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform, the man who called this out, those Southport murders 7 months ago, was laughed out of town, is now saying, I think quite conceivably correctly, he's accusing the Prime Minister of hiding behind contempt of court arguments. We're back in 3.
I'm asking you about Keir Starmer. I'm asking about the political decision of what...
You asked me about Keir Starmer.
Yes, and you talked about the police. Richard, I'm not sure we're getting very...
Because you talked about the definition of a terror offence and what Starmer had said about that. And I'm trying to talk about the ridiculous accusations that have been made and show how they don't have a factual basis. And the way that people manage to make these conspiracy theories seem like they're sticking is by mixing up very different things.
OK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back, just gone 4:25 Tuesday afternoon. This is Jeremy Carlin, driver. Russell Quirk, who I should actually tell you, by the way, protege or not, is doing Drive on Thursday. Do not, I promise you, this man is the future. I am sadly approaching the past. No, he's the man.
I never know if you're joking or not. I mean,
You are doing Drive Time on Thursday.
No, but about me, being fairly good at this thing, whatever it is.
Do you think I'm the past?
Well, no, I would never say such a thing. Of course not. You're the past, the present, the future. You're like, yes, Dickens.
Dickens. I've been called many worse things. Carl the Dickens. Yeah. Right, 0344 499 1000. Another call in just a tick. Text to 87222. So many texts, and I always feel like we should actually read them. Barry says Trump has done more in a few hours, in my mind, than our government has done in the last 15 years. Michael Wilkinson, a very good afternoon. Hearing our spectacularly useless Home Secretary claim it's a disgrace that the scum terrorist who murdered and maimed in Southport was able to buy a knife on Amazon seriously smacks of deflection. A determined terrorist could get any weapon they wanted just about anywhere. Labour will be going for Bessos and Musk, etc., with gusto in the coming months. Could not agree more. John from Newport, good afternoon. Jez, I watched Trump's speech yesterday with goosebumps and a feeling of pride. I listened to Starmer's speech this morning and had to switch it off after 5 minutes as my television was in danger of GBH. Niall in Hillingdon. Jez, 100% the country should have been told there was a potential terrorist making ricin. The gaslighted entire country. He gaslighted the entire country. I want him to resign. I know he won't. Smudge. Why would you call yourself Smudge? I've no idea. In Swindon. Jez, top show so far. Great. It's curious that Starmer is happy to have a public inquiry into the Southport murders, but not the vile Pakistani rape gangs. Could it be sustaining his Muslim vote that makes the difference? That's exactly what you said, Nigel. Starmer was very quick to name the people and the preserved motives behind the riots and didn't seem too concerned about prejudicing their trials. That's a really salient point as well, isn't it? And I said it in the break just then to Russ and some other people in the studio. I can't get away, and I could be totally wrong, I can't get away from the fact that when all that stuff started on social media, after this heinous attack, people were going, it's an illegal migrant, and they were getting more and more angry. Surely the Prime Minister could have quelled that, which led to the right-wing, hold on a second, riot, and said, listen, the guy was born in whatever, something, it's not an illegal migrant, it's a terrorist, I can say no more. Is there a part of me that's wrong to respectfully suggest that allowing that to blow up on social media, allowing people to take to the streets under false pretences to arrest them to show you're a strong man, that's where I think he's completely banged to rights.
Yes, but the collusion, whether it be Downing Street influencing, local police forces or whatever, was, on the one hand to say nothing because we don't want to speculate because of, the risk to the judicial process. But they did say that he was a Welsh Christian choir boy, which obviously now we suspect very, very strongly that there is an Islamist radical element to this, obviously proven by the Al-Qaeda manual and so on. But why in the first place say, rather than say nothing to deflect, why in the first place say, no, the opposite of what you think is true?
Politics.
He was Welsh, and he was a Christian choir boy. That is not consistent with their MO, to say nothing. They've said it to distract, to deflect. No wonder then the public start to speculate. And actually, look, we've still got people in prison for those speculations. I mean, what happens if this is proven to be terrorism? And I know there's this big question mark right now as to whether it was terrorism. I mean, to me, if it looks like terrorism, smells and feels like terrorism, sounds like terrorism, it might well be terrorism. If it is terrorism, join the dots, how can these people still languish in prison? What do we do about the memory of Peter Lynch, the individual that killed himself? He's in prison and, you know, related to this instance because of things he said on social media. He killed himself in prison. Where's the apology?
Absolutely spot on to Epsom. Daniel, good afternoon. You're on Drive. What you got?
Jez, when I watched Starmer this morning, right, my blood was boiling because he was saying, oh, we will keep you safe. We have to aim to keep you safe. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, there's thousands of young males from the Islamic third world crossing into our country illegally every week. And you're standing there telling me that you're going to keep us safe? I don't think so. And I think the reason we had those riots, if we take a step back, the macro, not the micro, is that for 20 or 30 years, the people of Britain have been crying out to get a grip of stop illegal immigration and get legal immigration under control, only allow the brightest and the best into the country. And successive governments haven't done it. We've imported FGM, honour killing, sham marriage, suicide bombing, the full veil, grooming gangs, all from the Islamic third world. We don't want it. We've never wanted it. And we want something done about it, Jez.
Listen, I couldn't agree more. And actually, every single day that we do this show, it tells me that this station is on the pulse of what the British people agree with. I make the point right here and now. Thank you, Daniel. I make the point here and now. I don't condone anything that went on in those riots, but I'm absolutely... I've always said to Ryan, I'm not one of those presenters that comes in with a preconceived idea, because I think the best form of radio, you flow with the people that contact you. Every single call is telling me that I'm not actually wide of the mark. You could have quelled this. You could have quelled this to Keir Starmer. It didn't suit your political aims. There were riots that suited your political aims. If you've been honest with the British people, and I agree with Daniel, they need to understand the elected class. This isn't an uprising. This isn't us talking, you know, think about Donald Trump yesterday. This is people who are switched on saying enough is enough. Talking about Donald Trump, astonishing day yesterday, the inauguration. Lots of people saying, oh, he's inappropriate. Many saying the greatest speech ever. Delighted to welcome now spokesperson for Republicans overseas. Oh, it's good to have her on. Jennifer Ewing, good afternoon.
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Russell.
Now, swelling, hey. You're drunk. That's what you see, because you're called Jennifer Ewing. I always do that. Can I say, we haven't spoken since November 5th, actually. I was on air yesterday. We played the whole speech. I had goosebumps, and I will be slaughtered by certain people who couldn't give a damn. I'll tell you why I had goosebumps. I don't agree with everything that your 47th president has said or done. There are many things in the past that he's said and done that I find not right. However, why I had goosebumps, this was a man who fervently believes in what he says, has got the pulse of the country, unlike Sir Keir Starmer. When he said there are two sexes, men and women, when he said I'm declaring a national emergency on the southern border, and when he, I mean, I just was inspired. What's been the reaction 24 hours on?
Yeah, you're right. And I think one of the words we're looking for here is he's authentic. And while we don't have to agree with everything he says, I don't know anybody I agree with everything they say, he did listen to the people. So what you were hearing from that speech last night was not things he just pulled out of a hat or pulled out of thin air. It was after 4 years of listening to American citizens and some of the issues, grievances, concerns that they had with their country going in the wrong direction. And we know that obviously economy always plays an issue, but the second one was the crisis we had at the southern border, for sure. And then the third one was they did not like the direction our foreign policy was going on. And so anyone that's surprised at the quickness at which he got out his pen and started signing executive orders, many of which were just a reversal of ones that Joe Biden signed January 2021 when he first got into office, especially around border security, has not been paying attention, not to Trump, but to the American people.
It's interesting, and you would say that. I think we can absolutely clearly say that he listened to the American people and he delivered what he said he was going to deliver. There were so many parts of that speech. One of the things in this country, Jennifer, which you'll know about, is this current government, and I have to say part of the Tories who were in power as well, Russell's obsession with the green agenda. I just honestly, when he called it liquid gold, and he basically said what we have been saying on this station, I mean, he did nick a phrase off us, by the way, the home of common sense, but to actually say to your people, right, instead of grabbing land from farmers by taxing them so they go bankrupt, nabbing your land, putting wind farms there, and by the way, it won't blow enough to get enough electricity, by which point I'm going to have to import it from some other country at 3 times the cost and screw my own people. No, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take advantage of what we've got under our ground. He called it liquid gold, and with Biden 5 feet behind him, he went, drill, baby, drill. We've got Ed Miliband, who'd like us all to... honestly, it was so inspiring, and it just makes me fear for this country in so many ways.
Yeah, look, you're right. The United States, we love our cars. I just spent 2.5 weeks back in my home state of California, where I had the privilege of driving my brother-in-law's Tesla. And so many people in California have Teslas, drive Teslas, love their Teslas. It works for them. But it's a choice that they're making. It's a consumer choice. It's not forced upon them. Biden wanted to force an EV mandate onto the United States people, and Trump said, no, if you want your gas-guzzling car, sure, go ahead. And I think Americans think, look, we work too hard. We pay too much in taxes. We like our air conditioning. We like our heaters. We like our cars. So, well, as much as we want clean air, clean water, by the way, you'll see Bobby Kennedy Jr. already looking into the water. You know, people want a safe, clean environment, but we do not want the government involved in every aspect of our lives, especially if there's no real proof that it's going to change lives of Americans for the better. And that's what Trump is put in office to do, to make Americans' lives better.
Couldn't agree more. Russell, what did you make of the speech?
I loved it. I mean, it was a kind of machine gun of destroying 4 years of a damaging Biden administration in one day.
Karma Trump, though, wasn't it, from 2016?
Yeah, I think he's grown up. I really do. I think the second
Maybe
term...
he knows Washington, D.C. now.
Yeah, this second term. Yeah, but I think he's got less to prove. He's done it. Now I think he will settle into genuinely being there for American people. I think the way he talks on not just the identity politics thing, but...
how good was that? Just a man and a woman?
Well, he just said, no, but now it's mandated. You know, a couple of things he mandated that were quite interesting. Mandated that there are now only 2 genders because, you know, there are. That's it. But also, you know, apart from things like the EV mandate now being ripped up, also not allowing employees to be able to mandate to their employers that they should work from home. This is music to our ears here. Let's hope it rubs off on the UK.
It's not going to, is it?
Well, and the very interesting thing is, in contrast to, you know, what happens here, and yeah, Jennifer, sorry, it's a UK point very quickly, is that, you know, we have a Keir Starmer that comes into power and literally does nothing that he said he was going to do in his manifesto, and does lots of things that were not in his manifesto. Donald Trump not only says what he's going to do and gets elected on it, before he's even sat down at the desk in the Oval Office, enacts, what was it, 100 or so executive orders to make sure that the things he promised the American people he would do, he actually does.
Before you go, Jennifer, we're tight as ever on time. 2 things. He pardoned nearly 1,600 Capitol riot defendants in those first orders. Nancy Pelosi, do you remember her? She went absolutely bat, and he said the wrong thing, bat something crazy. A lot of people are saying that's not right. However, let's not forget, sorry if I'm unfair here, but I don't give a damn, Joe Biden, on his last day in power, pardoned his entire family who haven't been accused of anything yet, and I would respectfully suggest that sends a very strong message, which is, I think some trouble's coming if you look at Hunter Biden and the rest of them. That was an extraordinary thing. That's the first point, right?
Well, not only that, Jeremy, but Joe Biden also pardoned the January 6th committee. So that's quite interesting. Wow. I think there's something to watch going forward there. But look, was this a wonderful day in the United States history? Absolutely not. Have there been people who have been overcharged, and has this been overplayed? There have been a lot of people doing hard time for years over this. This issue did not mean a lot to the American voters. Otherwise, President Trump wouldn't be reelected again. So time to move on. And yeah, time to move on.
Just to finish, I'll tell you why I salute him. Unbelievable. Within 10 minutes of being back in the White House, he reinstated Winston Churchill's bust in the Oval Office. Thank the Lord. Spot on again, right?
And again, our Prime Minister takes down a picture of Margaret Thatcher the day that he takes office in Downing Street.
Jennifer, enjoy it. We wish we had him here. Thank you, Jennifer Ewing, Republicans Overseas. What is it, 20 minutes to 5 o'clock? We're live across the UK. This is Tuesday on Drive. 0344 499 1000. Do not forget the man who stood up in the House of Commons and said to Sir Keir Starmer 7 months ago, after those Southport murders, he said, something's going on here. You need to not use contempt of court arguments. You need to give us more. I believe it's a terrorist attack. No. Far-right riots. Hoover them all up. Say absolutely nothing. Today, Starmer dragged out, literally, public opinion drags him out in front of the media and says, I did know, but I couldn't say. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform, on this show. It's an exclusive. It's after 5. We're coming back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kevin from 7 and the excellent Petri Hoskins from 10. This is JK on Drive. Russell is with me. Just very quickly, loads of messages. We'll try and get them. Jane, no one believes a word the Prime Minister or his government say about anything. He should resign and take that rotten cabinet with him. Good morning. Confused, good afternoon. Nick in Cornwall. Greetings, Jezza and Russell, who I'm delighted is doing Drive on Thursday, says Nick in Cornwall. So according to Starmer, he could not say anything as it would prejudice the trial. So broadcasting that all the protesters were all far-right thugs and needed to go to jail before the trial must mean their trials were prejudiced as well.
Yes.
That's the point. Let's go to a good friend of the station, a good friend of the show as well, former Conservative MP and military expert, Dr. Bob Celia. Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm very well. Good afternoon to you listeners, viewers.
Where do we start? I want to start actually differently to Southport. I want to start with Trump. Love him or loathe him, how inspiring was that? I had more messages yesterday than 3 years of being on this station. People going, wouldn't it be great, love him or loathe him, to have somebody in this country to stand up and say, do you know what? I'm going to make your lives financially better. I'm going to make you safer. I'm going to make you proud to be American. I'm going to put this country back, and I ain't paying for stuff that my people don't benefit from. It's not rock and roll, Bob Seeley, is it?
No, it's not rocket science, and I wish we'd at least tried to do a lot more of that when we had the chance, because there's a lot of us regretting it. The stuff that I really liked yesterday is when he just said, I'm mandating there are two genders. From now on, government says there's two genders, and anyone engaged in DEI, diversity, inclusion, whatever, equality, they're out of a job. And I just thought that is just, my God, couldn't we do that here? You know?
I got goosebumps, and I'm not ashamed to say that. It was fantastic.
But it's not like he's saying let's all be sort of white ethno-nationalists. This is not the argument. He wants a society based on merit. And there are so few people outside a professional class of whinging protesters of all different races, very often white, sort of privileged types, apart from those whinging protesters and those people who go around looking to take offence. There is very few people from whatever background in the society who would not agree with that and what Trump was doing. Get rid of DEI, judge people on the quality of their character, their abilities, not on the colour of their skin, not into this sort of intersectionality, critical race garbage that has so infected our government and sadly some of our major broadcasters, and actually just have a genuinely liberal society where people are judged on themselves, not the colour of their skin or any other factors.
I love that line he did. I'm going to be society will be colour blind and based on merit, declaring a state of emergency on the southern border, instantly saying people will be. I mean, there were pictures obviously in the Guardian today of immigrants, illegal immigrants, crying at the gates. Honestly, I thought to myself, and then this morning, on the basis of this euphoria about, and all the left is jumping up and he's inappropriate, he's this, he's that. No, he's managed to grab the pulse of the American people. And then I'm listening to Mike, some Morning Glory this morning, as I always do on the way to school. And then I listen to that dreary, uninspiring lawyer who gets dragged out in front of the national media to admit that he knew about the Southport killers' extremist history and terror links. What did you make of that, Bob Seeley?
I mean, look, there's less information came out about Southport, and you have to ask why. And look, there may be a good reason, but I just want to hear it. And what we're not getting from Starmer or Cooper is straight answers. We're getting straightforward evasion. Chris Philp, Tory Shadow Home Secretary, I thought he spoke very well. Yeah. He said Starmer knew that the Southport murderer, as a repugnant human being, had been referred to prevent. He knew he was in possession of ricin. He knew he had an Al-Qaeda training manual. This info was made public in October before his trial, and we didn't know he was going to plead guilty. So why was it not made available in August, just to say there is a terror link here? And actually just reassuring people may have actually meant that people didn't go out and swap messages that wound people up, didn't go out and riot, but actually in that vacuum, which was partly pulled allegedly by what foreign actors kicking off as well, in that vacuum there were problems caused. And I think somebody just said, I was just on your programme a few minutes ago, if Starmer is saying people are far-right protesters before their trial, I'm not quite sure how that encourages a fair trial for those people accused of being far-right.
But it's two-tier policing and two-tier justice. I wanted to, but Russell Quirk's with me. He'll speak in a second. I just wanted to put to you, Bob, what I started thinking a couple of hours ago. Some people will laugh me out of town. So if he'd given a little bit more detail and admitted that it was a terrorist-based attack at that moment, being honest with the people, that would have quelled all that disunity and rancor that took place online that led to the riots. But after the riots, he said this is all far right, sent out the police, got these people tried and jailed within 24 hours. One could conceivably say that our current Prime Minister used this for his own political benefits, because that is not an outrageous assumption, is it?
To be honest, I haven't gone down that angle myself. It's an opinion. I don't know if I share it or not because it's the first time I've heard it. I just think that we can't just go back to the past. But I'm just thinking that if they were clearer and more honest within the bounds of the law, clearly, because you don't want to jeopardise the trial, I think those events might have turned out differently. And I think to smear people, look, there's no excuse for rioting. And
no,
I'm not
none at all. None
some
at all.
rioters as opposed to others. But there is something else going back to Trump. There is a sense increasingly that there's a sense in our country that the state doesn't work for the people, that the state has a separate agenda, that frankly the people pay for it. The state considers them frankly a pain up the arse, pardon my French.
No, we can say arse, it's fine.
And has its own agenda. And I think when it comes to the grooming gangs, or when it comes to the reaction to this, or when it comes to quite a few other things that are happening, we look and see how Trump, and I'm not a huge fan of Trump, to be honest, you look and see how Trump is at least trying to give back the state to the people, so the state serves the people and the state doesn't have its own agenda. All asylum seekers are good, all asylum seekers are victims, anyone who comes here illegally probably is sort of, justifiable, etc. There is a state agenda here which is different from the people's agenda in this country. And we got kicked out because people were fed up with that agenda, and actually we should have done more to confront it, absolutely. But that agenda now is being turbocharged in completely the wrong direction, and I just think it's getting people much more wound up about what's happening in our country, and actually much angrier, and they want the state to be working for them.
Listen, always great to have you on. I know I could talk to you all day. Dr Bob Seeley, former Conservative MP and military expert. Russell Quirk is with me for 10 more minutes. You want to get your call on before 5 o'clock, 0344 419 1000. This is Talk Drive.
I'm asking you about Keir Starmer. I'm asking about the political decision of what...
me about Keir Starmer.
Yes, and you talked about the police. Richard, I'm not sure we're getting very...
Because you talked about the definition of a terror offence and what Starmer had said about that. And I'm trying to talk about the ridiculous accusations that have been made and show how they don't have a factual basis. And the way that people manage to make these conspiracy theories seem like they're sticking is by mixing up very different things.
OK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7 minutes to 5. Straight to the phone lines. We'll go to Kent. Sue, you're on Talk Drive. Russell Quirk is with me. What you got?
Hello. I was listening to Ian Collins earlier on. He had a lawyer on.
Yes.
And the lawyer was saying about this person that committed these crimes was a troubled individual. I'm sick to death of people saying these perpetrators are troubled. A lot of people are troubled if they don't go out and do these crimes. And also the fact that, if people can be arrested for saying hurty words and are monitored and are found out, why can't these people be monitored that order zombie knives online, and other stuff for making, bombs and things? Why? Why are these people allowed to get away with it? Because it suits Starmer to have these armies of young men coming over just so he can have the votes. What's he going to do when the country rises up, when they've had enough of all of this?
Well, listen to this. Listen, I don't disagree with anything. So Bill in Romsey just reiterates what you said, Russ, just now. Read the Starmer speech, Jez. He said, a line in the sand. We must protect our children. I support him. But what about the young girls abused and raped by the gangs in Labour-controlled constituencies? It's hypocrisy, Sue, isn't it, Russ?
It's unfortunate. It's putting politics before people, politics before victims.
People when it suits him.
Yep, exactly.
Sue, thank you so much. Let's go to Essex. Scott, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Hi, Jeremy. Hope you're staying warm.
Sorry?
Hope you're staying warm. It's a bit cold outside.
Well, it is if you're a pensioner like me, nearly. I have to wrap up in my... I've got my vest on today. Crack on.
I was just saying that was mentioned earlier about the fact that Labour government will not do any investigations, which hurts the Labour idea, but will go after any situation which could be inconvenient to the Conservatives, and I'm sure the Conservatives will do the same back. It's a nice quid pro quo. But the only way you're actually going to get an answer on both of these is almost by going to reform, because they haven't got anything on the fire, as it were, in either stance. So
We've got the leader of reform and just... we've got the leader of reform, Nigel Farage, in less than 10 minutes. You agree with him, don't you? Absolutely. You've got to agree with Scott in Essex.
Well, no, I do, on the basis that I think that lovely term now where we term the Labour and the Conservative parties in government or otherwise as the uni party, I think is a phrase that should be used a lot more often, because, I think we've had decades and decades of Labour and Conservative politicians telling us what we want to hear to get elected, then not enacting those things, being incompetent. We have a problem in politics, in my opinion, whereby they are selecting people that have no life experience. They are self-absorbed, self-promotional. They do not care about Britain, and they do not care about the public. They care about themselves. So, I think Scott has a point that I think we need a sea change. I think we need a revolution in politics. And actually, whether you support reform or not, I think you should potentially consider that you shouldn't perhaps vote Conservative or Labour, because you need to do something different. Otherwise, we'll end up with a status quo for another 20 or 30
Thank you,
years.
Scott. And I think the YouGov poll the other day was a seismic moment. I think it was an absolutely seismic moment, because I think two-party politics, for whatever reason, is about to end. Chris is in Epsom. Final call this hour. Russell Quirk is here. What you got?
OK, Jed. We've spoken before. Remember, my girlfriend's about the same age difference as your wife.
Right, crack on. Crack on.
Okay.
Says I should have more of what you have to eat. You look better. Listen, the obfuscation from Starmer and Cooper is blatantly obvious. They've not... Now, remember that even though he was found with ricin and with an Al-Qaeda manual, OK, the murder charges are just murder charges. They haven't prosecuted him for a terrorist attack. That's what they're leaning on. Now, there's been a deal done there for him to plead guilty. All right, whatever the deal is, soft prison, clearing him out in 10 years to serve his sentence in another country. Whatever it is, there's a dirty deal being done there. And Cooper's tried to get out in advance of the story and control the narrative by coming out and saying, there'll be an inquiry. And if the inquiry starts going wrong a little bit, they'll kick it into the long grass until after the next election.
All right, Chris, thank you for your call. Russell, respond to that quickly.
Yeah, no, I was just going to go back to the inquiry that Yvette Cooper has unusually called for.
But not into rape gangs.
No, but again, thinking about the terms of reference, I wonder if at the end of that inquiry we will end up being told that this monster actually just had mental health problems, nothing to do with terrorism. It was just mental health. Well, I've got news for you. You can have mental health problems and be a terrorist. In fact, I would say that they are not mutually exclusive.
Very interesting. Trevor, voice note on Southport. Go.
I'm just wondering, with this Southport inquiry, whether this will include the Speaker of the House trying to close down this debate and stopping parliamentary privilege. I really don't want that excluded. I want to know why the Speaker shut down democracy. Ryan, love you, man. You're a Watford supporter.
Never have him on again. 10 seconds.
Just very quickly, the way round this, if that's true in terms of parliamentary privilege being revoked because they're worried about contempt of court, why not have a closed parliamentary session where people like Rupert Lowe and Lee Anderson and Nigel Farage can ask questions outside of the public gaze? That would seem to me to be the solution. I don't think that's ideal. I think that we certainly have a right to know. But that could be done so that at least the politicians that we've elected are able to scrutinise such instances.
7 months ago, after the murder of those sweet young girls by that thug Alex Rudincana, who yesterday admitted guilt to their murder, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform, stood up and took the Prime Minister on. He was laughed out of town. He's just landed back from the United States. I'm going to build it up and he won't answer his phone. Nigel Farage will be on Talk Drive after the news at 5. Russell Quirk, what an amazing man. And the big news, ladies and gentlemen, Russell Quirk debuts Drive Time on Thursday from 4 o'clock. Give it a listen. He's a good man. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, mate. That's very nice. Thank you for
We're looking forward to listening on Thursday. I will be listening intently from my retirement home. In the next hour, Nigel Farage. What do you want me to ask him? 0344 499 1000. Maybe you can speak to him. You can certainly text the question 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Nigel Farage, the man who first asked about the Southport murders, is next on Drive on Talk after the news at 5 next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hour 2 a Drive for Tuesday. We're live across the UK. Talk, of course, the home of free speech and common sense. That's even been nicked now by the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump, who yesterday said the golden age of America is a revolution of common sense. I've been promising you for the last hour. Delighted that he's on the line now, freshly landed from Trump's inauguration. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform, and then, of course, Brexit, the main man. Nigel, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. Yes, and very inspired by the optimism in America. Wow, the contrast coming back here is really quite something.
Well, there's so much I want to ask you. I know that you were there. I freely admit, and I've already been slaughtered by the bedwetters, as I've now started to call them. I sat and listened to that speech, Nigel, yesterday, and got goosebumps to hear a man, I mean, he coined the phrase common sense, talk about, you know, two genders, talk about declaring a state of emergency on the southern border and finally dealing with immigration, bringing common sense back to almost everything, was so refreshing, man.
It was, and it reminded me, much of it reminded me of Reform UK's contract with the people that we put out at the last general election. Because many, many of those points are, I mean, obviously slightly different circumstances being America, but many of them very, very common themes. And I like to think what we stand for is common sense as well. I mean, the fact is, if we are going to be using oil and gas for the next 20, 30 years, which we are, in fact, last week, when the wind wasn't blowing, 60% of our electricity was being generated by gas that we were burning. So if we're going to be using this stuff, and yeah, we'll keep trying to find, you know, new technologies and all the rest, but why not produce it yourself? And that's really what Trump's saying, and we're saying pretty much the same thing.
I've never understood, and I'm listen. You lead a political party. I'm nobody, but this is what I don't get. You've got patently a government that are trying to screw the farming community to go bankrupt, to nick their land, to build wind farms when we know there's not enough wind in the United Kingdom, whereupon, you idiot Starmer, you're going to have to import oil and gas, liquid gold that we've got under the ground at a cost that's 3 times more than you could do it yourself, and that'll screw the British people even more. How does any of that make sense, Nigel?
You know, last week I had coffee with a bloke who's got 30,000 UK employees, right?
Yep.
So serious businessman, somebody that really matters in this country. He said in 1990, his electricity costs were exactly the same as America's for running the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today, they're six times America's. Think about that. 6 times America's. And ask yourself why the biggest refinery in the UK is about to close. Ask yourself why Port Talbot, the steelworks, closed a few months ago. Ask yourself why most of our chemicals industry has gone, why both of our aluminium smelters have gone. We are literally deindustrializing, forcing up prices, importing more goods that we could make and produce ourselves. It is literally lunacy. And I think in America, with Trump, it's all over. I mean, it is completely all over. But my goodness me, the problems that we face here, and of course, actually, you know, Ed Miliband, I mean, this appears to be his sort of substitute for religion.
He frightens me, Nigel. He actually frightens me. I think he's one of the most dangerous men in British politics. I think he's an idiot.
Well, I think the damage that he's going to do to the UK economy. And let's not forget, you know, I've talked about industry. Let's not forget that our domestic electricity bills are 4 times as expensive as America. And if you go down the pub, you know, after work today, although...
Are you allowed to? I'm not sure you're allowed today.
Because you might find there's no one in there because no one's got any money.
Yeah.
You know, the cost of living crisis is very, very real. And I think when this quarter's electricity bills hit the mats, people are going to be very, very shocked indeed.
When we watched that yesterday, we'll bring you on to today, and I watched it with goosebumps. I did the show. I was on the school run this morning, listened to Mike, and the difference between a man who, yes, has had his issues, Donald Trump. There are certain things that none of us would agree with, but what that man did was he grabbed the pulse of the British public, which is what I believe Reform is doing brilliantly. And then this morning I listened to that dreary, reactive, not proactive lawyer, and was thoroughly and utterly uninspired. I want to talk, if I can, about these dreadful, dreadful stabbings in Southport. I'll take you back to July. You were accused of stirring up online conspiracy theories. You were called Tommy Robinson in a suit over the comments that you made. You posted a video on X before the riots broke out, questioning the accuracy of the police's assessment that that knife attack was not terror-related. Now, treat me as an idiot. You've been proven to be absolutely right. I've got a theory which you might laugh out of town. If our Prime Minister at that moment stood up, and we understand that there's certain stuff legally that he couldn't have said, but had been a little bit more forthcoming, that it was a terrorist attack, it was under control, all the things that have been said in other situations before, presumably the vacuum of discontent that started online wouldn't have spread onto the streets, whereupon he could arrest and jail everybody within 24 hours and look strong. Do we not believe that his dishonesty at that moment was actually part of the reason there were the very problems which he then put down to the far right? Or have I missed the point?
Yes, I get it completely. I totally agree. And that's what I was saying. I said in that video, was this man known to the authorities? Now, I had a fair inkling at the time that he was, because I'd been given some fairly good information from Southport. Was he known to the authorities? Tell us the truth. Why are we not being told the truth, is what I said in that video. And it's very interesting that Lord Carlisle, who was a Liberal Democrat member of the House of Lords, who has over the years been one of the draftsmen for our terrorism legislation, he's consistently said the public deserves to know the truth. Governments should stop hiding behind saying, we can't say anything because someone's been arrested and it would be contempt of court. Just telling us the truth about who that person was would not have in any way influenced or changed a trial that might happen. And even today, the Prime Minister couldn't come clean. He continued with the insistence that we deserve to know nothing. Mm-hmm. He couldn't even himself say it was a terror attack. Well, let's have a think about this, shall we? Al-Qaeda training manuals, chemical weapons. Mm-hmm. I mean, what more do you need to understand that this guy was a terrorist? He was motivated by a vile ideology, and he'd been thinking this way and behaving this way for some time, indeed, even whilst he was at school.
There was a father that prevented him from going back to his old school a week before. There's hypocrisy in Starmer's words, though, massive hypocrisy, because, as you quite rightly say, today he made this big thing about, I didn't want to say anything at the time for fear of prejudicing a trial. Well, surely by calling everybody who... And by the way, I don't condone the far-right rights any more than you do, but that vacuum was, I think, created by his words. By surely coming out and saying that everybody that took to the streets was a far-right thug, would it not be fair to say our Prime Minister prejudiced those people's trials and they could be in prison now when it was a terrorist attack?
Well, absolutely. And, of course, that is where two-tier came from. Yeah. Two-tier care, really... That phrase of two-tier policing, two-tier justice, two-tier care, that all came from Southport. It was something that Elon Musk gave even more sort of light to as a phrase. And you see it everywhere. And it's like, they'll condemn anyone that they don't like, who's white, working class and a bit rough around the edges. But they're terrified of saying anything at all that they think might offend some in the Muslim community, partly because they're incredibly woke, but also because they fear losing votes as a party to these Gaza independents. And I tell you what, that actually, I think, is driving much of what we're seeing in the Labour Party, their absolute refusal to stand up for the rights of Jewish people who are having, in some parts of our country now, the most awful time, their reluctance to really stand up and fight for Emily Damari, who mercifully has been now released as a hostage. They fear the Gaza independence. They fear this new wave of politics. And if you look at it, Wes Streeting only crept in by 500.
He did, and Jonathan Ashworth, who I've spoken to on many occasions, lost his seat in Leicester East. And it has to be said that if you are Starmer, it would be fair enough to accuse him of politicising almost all of these arguments. You call every riot of far right, you use that vacuum, but you're right. If you're going to attack certain people and not others for fear of those red seats, look at the farming community. Ian Collins used a great phrase earlier, Nigel. He said the pulse. The difference between Donald Trump having the pulse of the American people, like him or don't like him. Yesterday, instantly, he did what he said he was going to do. I believe, I've made no secret of my support for your party. I've told you personally as well, because I was brought up on conservative values. They disappeared. The Conservative Party doesn't have low taxation, strong borders and a strong military and a police that, people are scared of, because that's what happens. They've gone to the centre. What reform? And then reform got accused by Sir Keir Starmer of being far right. I think he's on very, very shaky ground, as is Yvette Cooper, who's called a public inquiry into Southport attack. I'd love your answer to this, Nigel Farage. Quick to do that, but won't deal with a national inquiry into the rape gangs.
Yes, mass rape gangs, thousands of young white girls seriously abused, often, I think, actually with racist motives, interestingly, a point that people are slightly frightened to make, but I think it's true. And yes, have a public inquiry into this, because effectively you're just kicking the can down the road. The argument against the mass rape gang inquiry was that it would take 7 years. So tell me, Sir Keir, is this inquiry going to take 7 years? Just for how long do you think you can kick this down the road? And what do you think? Do you think we're all stupid? He must think we're all stupid. I think people are joining up the dots. I think people are realising they've not played straight with us. And actually, what has happened over this Southport incident is one of the biggest cover-ups I've seen in my lifetime. And it even went to a level that I simply could not believe. It was Prime Minister's questions.
Yeah.
It was the week after the murders. It was midday. And I wanted to get up and I wanted to ask the same question I'd asked on that video online. Was this man known to the authorities? And after all, when we had the London Bridge attacks, within an hour we were told that one of the individuals was known to the authorities, right? So plenty of precedent for doing that sort of thing. And we were told at midday by the Speaker, undoubtedly under duress from a big majority Labour government, that we were not allowed to ask any questions about Southport. So parliamentary privilege, which has been there for centuries, even that was taken away in the aftermath.
Why would they not have? Why would they not? Why would Sir Lindsay Hall not have given the opportunity for you and your colleagues and other people to perhaps do it in the chamber that's not televised or recorded? Why? You can't have confidence in Sir Lindsay Hall if you shut down that debate, can you?
Well, Sir Lindsay Hall, I think, has actually brought great dignity back to the position of Speaker after I thought John Bercow besmirched it in the most appalling way in the years before. So Hoyle, I think, is brilliant. But, of course, you know, he only keeps his job if the government and 400 Labour MPs support him. And I think he was put under the most incredible duress by the government at that time. As you say, it could have been one of those rare moments where Parliament, dealt with this in camera. Yeah. But actually, nothing I was going to ask that day, nothing I was going to ask would have prejudiced that trial at all, because it protected the Prime Minister from not having to answer that very simple.
You made a really interesting point to me just then, and I have this conversation more often than not with taxi drivers all across this country. Right, I spend my life in Ubers and taxis, and they all say the same thing. Guy said to me the other day, Nigel, he said, how is it, this is down in Bournemouth, how is it that 5 MPs from Reform make more noise and speak the things that I want asked more than the other 650. And I do think that the British people, and I'm being straight here, I think the British people went through a stage of being really hacked off with politicians in every part and every sphere, the expenses, the lies, the 3 prime ministers in a week, whatever it was. Donald Trump's shown that if a politician, warts and all, can stand up and say, listen, you might disagree with me, but this is what I think. I'm not going to deviate. You can throw what you want at me. You can accuse me of left. You can write articles. If you come with me, I'll tell you the good, the bad and the ugly, but this is what we're doing. That's what this country needs, surely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the problems is that so many people in politics are literally career politicians. Yeah. You know, this job is the best paid job and the best job they are ever going to have in their lives, and they come into it with very little life experience. I can assure you that the 5 of us that sit there for Reform, we could all do a lot better outside Parliament if we chose to, and we're not doing it for a career. We're doing it because we believe something needs to be done. So I think motivations are important. And the same with Trump. I mean, you know, Trump doesn't need this job, does he?
No.
You know, he's 78, he's got a beautiful wife, he's got a network of golf courses around the world, the likes of which have never been seen by any private individual's portfolio. He doesn't need this job either. So I think it is about what the motivations of your political leaders are. And so I hope that what the 5 of us do, is stand up and fight for what we believe in. And
is that your political motivation? I have people every single day saying Nigel Farage can save this country. Nigel Farage should be our next Prime Minister. I've also seen people say, how do you crack that 2-party system? When that YouGov poll was out, I had Richard in the studio with me, and I said I thought it was a seismic moment, because I think the days of that 2-party system have gone with that poll instantly. I think that's gone.
Yeah, I think we are potentially at a sort of 1918 moment. If you think back, because none of us were around then, but if you think back 160
Feel like years, I was, pal.
Well, I know some mornings I do too, but particularly after I've been to the American inauguration parties. But you know, the Liberal Party had been the governing party, really. You know, for most of the first part of the 20th century. They've been around forever. And suddenly a new force called the Labour Party come along in the wake of the Great War and become one of the big two, and the Liberals have never ever looked like winning an election ever since. And so, it may well be we're at one of those moments where real seismic change is coming to British politics. And I really hope so, because I used to hear people talk about the Uni Party. I think it was sort of online conspiracy theory. But the more I think about it, big state, big tax, uncontrolled immigration, lack of willingness to deal even with those that come into Britain illegally, no connection with men and women out there running their own businesses, whether they're taxi drivers or builders or whatever they may be, they are actually pretty similar.
Honestly, I agree. Now, I couldn't let you go without asking the obvious question. You had a good time at the inauguration. How is it with Elon? Did you hang out together?
We didn't, but we were chatting quite a lot during the time. We're desperately trying to get together to have a meeting. It didn't quite make it happen, but we're on good speaking terms. We have a different point of view. You know, he views Tommy Robinson in a different light to me. He's even going to help fund some of his legal expenses. Fine, do what you want, Elon. That's great. The issue is that, you know, I have never wanted... There is a genuine far right, okay? They're very, very small in number, but I've never, ever wanted them to be part of this political party. And I've never thought Tommy Robinson is someone that I should open my arms up to and embrace. So, fine, some people see him as a hero for standing up and talking about grooming gangs. I just don't think he's right for me politically. And I think we've sort of reached a point where Elon and I now understand each other on that.
And isn't actually one of the things about being... I read far more comments that said this, that actually you showed leadership in standing by what you believed in to somebody like Musk, who, yes, of course, controls X, and people, you could argue, has brought to the public's awareness many, many things. But if you are going to be a Prime Minister, if you are going to be a leader of this country, there will be people you have to say no to and people you have to hack off. And that surely is the number one lesson. You look at Trump and go, yeah, because he doesn't mind what you throw at him, does he?
No, and I mean, look, you know, I think Elon's a blooming hero. I think the fact that he bought Twitter has brought free speech back. Even Mark Zuckerberg's done a 180-degree turnaround in terms of how Facebook and Instagram are managed, thank goodness, and got rid of DEI hiring and all of that. I think Musk's a hero. It doesn't mean we agree on everything. And I'm not the sort of person that can be pushed around by anybody, even the richest man in the world. I believe in the principles I believe in. I'm going to stick to those. I'm going to fight on those. And you never know, in 4 years' time, at the next general election, we might well pull off something spectacular.
One question, if you do make it all the way to number 10, will you still speak to me?
Of course, Jeremy, absolutely.
You're knackered. He just got off a plane, this poor man. Listen, I know, we will, mate. Listen, Nigel Farage, thank you so much indeed. Always great to have you on Drive Time. Nigel Farage, leader there of the Reform, just off a plane at Stansted, an exclusive for talk. For anybody else, his thoughts about Elon Musk, his thoughts about Sir Keir Starmer, the stabbings in Southport, his thoughts about the inauguration, Donald Trump, all of it exclusive to talk. This is Drive.
I'm asking you about Keir Starmer. I'm asking about the political decision of what...
me about Keir Starmer
yes, and you talked about the police. Richard, I'm not sure we're getting very...
Because you talked about the definition of a terror offence and what Starmer had said about that. And I'm trying to talk about the ridiculous accusations that have been made and show how they don't have a factual basis. And the way that people manage to make these conspiracy theories seem like they're sticking is by mixing up very different things.
OK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 5:25. Thank you to Nigel Farage. Something very funny happened. If you were watching yesterday, Donald Trump, he said there are two sexes, pronouns in federal buildings have gone. My next caller is called Brian, but Jodie's written down Brian, right? I thought she meant, is that his pronouns? That's banned. Brian, it's how it's pronounced. I'm such an old git. How are you?
No, it's Brian. It's Irish.
I thought she was putting... It might well be Irish, but I thought she put down your pronouns. I was about to kick right off, man.
Oh, good God, no. Good
How are
God,
you?
No, mate. Anyway, first off, Jezza, brilliant to speak to you. Love your show.
Thank you.
And come on, you irons. Right, but apart from
Good
that,
boy, we're a West Ham fan. Can I just, while we're at it, because Nigel's also slightly soft on West Ham, can you tell Ryan what you think of crappy Watford, please?
We haven't got time.
Brilliant. That's all you need, right?
Right.
Oh, he's full of it. Yeah,
So,
go on, crack on.
The reason I was calling was I woke up this morning and I was on my way to work and I'm listening on the radio to Mr. Starmer giving his speech in inverted commas, whatever. And to be honest with you, it's probably one of the better things that he's actually said, but still wooden, disingenuous, etc. But my point that I was listening to when he's talking away, when he started saying it, was he's saying about terrorism. It used to be organised groups, but now it's single individuals, and we have to look into that. And I'm listening to that, I'm thinking, well, rape used to be individuals, and now it's organised groups, and we have to look into that. And we have to... He was going about protecting our young children and all this sort of thing. And you're like, your reason for a public inquiry for Southport, which is completely justified, it should have a public inquiry because, again, the powers that be, the systems, the blob, the whole thing fails, and it fails because of and I've listened to you and Julia and all the guys on your, and everyone knows, right, that it's just a completely incompetent state that we're having to deal with. But how he can justify not having a public inquiry.
I'll tell you exactly why I think. I put it to Nigel, he agreed with me. I think Russell Quirk had it spot on earlier. The hypocrisy about, quite rightly, and you make the point, calling a national inquiry for those poor girls that were... I mean, it doesn't... The guy had an Al-Qaeda terrorist handbook. He had ricin. He was chemical weapons. We don't need to say any more. He could have quelled everything, all of those riots, by saying, it's a terrorist, we can't say any more. He didn't. He let it. He took advantage. He said they're right-wing thugs. That's fine. There is a far right, as Nigel said. However, what's really interesting is the grooming gangs. No, let's call them what they are. Rape gangs have been going on for years. The reason I believe, and I completely stand by this, that Nigel said it, Mike said it this morning on breakfast, Chris Phipp implied it as well, right? Philp. I think it's because if he dares to come out and talk about the number of rape gangs that are, I'm very sorry, the British Pakistani rape gangs in Rotherham, it took 8 years. The police admitted they were concerned that they would stir up cultural division. More than that, I believe the Labour Party, having lost 5 seats in the general election to Muslim candidates who, it was their right to stand simply on a Gaza thing, nothing else at all, they won. I think he's scared of losing that vote, and that says nothing about protecting children. That says everything, Sir Keir Starmer, about you protecting your own political party. But I tell you something, and I keep saying it, I believe that this country is waking up. There will be people online, when I go on the train tonight, they'll say, oh, Jeremy Kyle's stirring. No, I'm not. I'm telling the truth. If you can't say it as you see it, there's no point in having a democracy or free speech, is there?
No. No, I mean, I live out in Essex, in a relatively affluent area. I run, me and my wife, we run our own businesses. Let's not even get on to the economic impact of what they're doing. But the lot before were useless.
Yep.
This lot are useless. The only way out of it that I see is reform. But unfortunately, I don't think reform are pushing forward their own other policies enough.
Let's bear in mind how long reform's been going. Reform is being... Reform, what they did from what they were to what... And they're growing every single day. But listen, mate, I'm sorry about your pronouns being Brian. I'm joking. It's great to have you on board. Spread the word in Essex. Thank you. Brian from Essex. Go to Cornwall. Jill, you're on Talk Drive. What you got?
Well, I'll tell you what, this show is just brilliant. It really is. It gives everyone, just ordinary people, a voice. And what I really like about it is that you can speak your mind without somebody turning around and calling you racist, ageist, sexist, you name it, some historism, without being accused of that. The truth is, as you see it. And there is this culture thing with these groups. I'm sorry, but there is. And if we can't talk about it as it really is, then we are going to be up a creek without a paddle.
I think we live in a... I never thought that I'd be lucky enough to be on a station like this. I was brought up by a man who always spoke his mind. Sometimes it got him into trouble. I don't say anything on this station that I don't believe in. And some people they go, oh, my God, you know, Donald Trump is... Yeah, Donald Trump is flawed. But Donald Trump has got his hand on the pulse of 89 million Americans. And I believe that this country is crying out for politicians. I don't care if they're Conservative, Labour, don't talk to me about the Liberal Democrats, that's a joke, Reform or whatever, but politicians who stand up and say, right, this is me, I've done this, done that, done this in my life. Some of you might want to write articles and say I'm flawed, I've been divorced, whatever, right? I've got drunk a few times, I've had a bet, whatever. This is how I see it. And if you come with me, there'll be highs, there'll be lows, but I'll always be straight with you. I'll get things right, I'll get things wrong. But we're going to have to take some medicine. So who does that sound like? Margaret Thatcher. Sure, at the end of 10 years, nobody supported her because she sacked everybody, but she had a vision. Tony Blair, he had a vision. I don't believe that we have those sort of politicians. I believe Nigel Farage is the nearest we've got to that. I don't believe we've had those politicians. I think he's right. I think they've been career politicians who are only interested, Jill, in getting re-elected. That does nothing for creating change, and that is what this country needs. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do, and I think Starmer has decided that because he wants the vote, the Muslim vote, the whatever vote it is other than you and me. I think because he wants that, he's not prepared to look into or do something about... Look, after all these years, and they've got faces to some of these people that are in these gangs, they seem to know who they are and everything else. Why are we having more inquiries? Why aren't we charging these people with the crimes that they've committed and putting them in blinking prison, for God's sake?
Couldn't agree more. We love having you on, Jill. Thank you very much indeed. Keep the calls coming. 0344 499 1000. A few quick emails. Brian, Jezza, that low-life animal, Rudy Cabana, should be locked in a room with the parents of those sweet little girls he murdered. Is this not a strong case of bringing back the death penalty? Our gutless government have blood on their hands. Paul's in Dorset. The families of those 3 kids this morning must be angry at Keir Starmer's statement. That would be an understatement. Zoe's in Lancashire. Jez, I watched Trump's speech and wept. Everything he was saying he was going to do is exactly what the idiot Starmer should be doing. Trump sounded so sincere and positive about his country and his people. What do we get here? Woke lies and nothing but hatred towards the United Kingdom. Neil says, I'm very grateful for the PM allowing me to be angry about the events in Southport. He's such a kind man. Not. Hello to Nathan. Jez, if Starmer really gives a damn about the safety of British citizens and our kids, then he needs to start deporting or locking up the 43,000 terrorists that are currently on the MI5 watch list. But he won't do that, will he? Because he might upset upset somebody. Hello to Rachel. Call me naive, Jez, but listening to Trump's inauguration speech, I couldn't help thinking that he will really look after his people. Listening to Starmer this morning, I have to say, I thought the complete opposite. Finally, for now, G in Birmingham. Jez, a great show as always. It's typical that Starmer and his Looney Tunes are looking to pass the blame and take the heat off their own shameful shortcomings. Notice how suddenly the face of this killer is all over the media, but before, all we saw was the innocent schoolboy photo, yet the British public are treated like fools. It cannot carry on as well. Terry and Slough, this Labour government has turned incompetency into an art form. 87222, start your message with the word talk. This is Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
From 10, amazing Mike in the morning with Morning Glory from 6 a.m. We line up on the home of common sense. We keep saying it. Talk is about free speech. It's about honesty, integrity and not being scared. See the picture of Donald Trump looking angry. Brilliant. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Delighted with my next guest to come here, General Chip Chapman, Major General Chip Chapman. Chip, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. I'm Tickety-Boo.
Tickety-Boo? Goodness me. Tickety-Boo's become a bit of a pin-up, old Chip, haven't you? Can you do me a favour? Layman's terms here, because you're supremely more intelligent than me. Southport attacker. In July, before the riots started, Nigel Farage tweeted on X, I think the government need to be more transparent. This is terror-related. Now, this morning our leader stood up, hauled before, I have to say, the national media, and admitted he knew about the Southport killers' extremist history and terror links, but he said that he didn't want to prejudice the Rudy Bacana trial. Now, that doesn't really stand up, because in other situations, stuff like that has been released a minimal amount of information. That's not incorrect, is it, Chip?
Some of it is. So if the attack happened on the 29th of July,
yep,
the riot spanned the 30th of July to the 5th of August. Now, what you knew in that first 24 hours is there's been mass criminal murder. Someone was put in the bag and would be prosecuted for that. And there's a notion that, or there has been a notion from Jenrick and others, for example, that the public had a right to know the truth straight away, but that's actually not true. So the law limits what can be released prior to a trial, and at the time his age was also relevant, he was 17. So we were given the info we needed. Someone had been arrested, people had been killed, the public was safe, and the families and children were supported. What then powered things, of course, was there was this notion via disinformation by anonymous trolls and bots that this guy was an asylum seeker who was in a hostel. And he wasn't. Of course, he was born in Cardiff of random...
But why didn't they... You're not going to tell me that it prejudiced his trial to have come out at that stage when this stuff is stirring up on social media, when it led to what happened, and I don't condone anything that happened on the streets, and in fact, I was very supportive of Starmer crushing that very quickly. However, surely the Prime Minister could have said at that point, listen, this is terror-related. It was quite easy to work that out, seeing as how there was an Al-Qaeda guidebook, it seems, that you can get on anything. There was weapons, there was recent apparently. But what I'm saying is, wouldn't that have got rid of that vacuum of uncertainty that led to the riot? Surely today he should have said, I could have said a little bit more and done more and maybe helped the situation.
That again would be true if that timeline were the case, but it wasn't, because the investigation and the exploitation of the House and the seeing the rising would have pushed that to the right. So you'd be absolutely right to say that there are two charges against him, one of which is possession of a terrorist manual, and that is a terrorist offence under Section 58 of the Terrorism Act 2000. But I suspect on that one, for example, that was really a how do I kill lots of people, rather than is he an Al-Qaeda terrorist? I suspect not. If I was to sort of ask him because of his age, for example, if he knew who Osama bin Laden
Listen,
was...
you're the expert. You're the expert, Chip. But many people contacting the show are confused, and they're confused about one thing. Sir Keir Starmer, yes, the people that watch this probably not his biggest fans, but he is our Prime Minister. He was elected. He has a majority. He was, of course, the Director of Public Prosecutions. He's very loyally, which many people thought was a good idea after the debacle of the last however many years. However, what I'm saying to you is the pulse of this nation is beating on many fronts, and I wonder whether that would have been an opportunity, irrespective of timelines, to have said at some point a little bit more. For example, he came out and was very fervent that all the riots were far right, and he dealt with those. Today, Yvette Cooper announces a public inquiry, quite rightly, into the appalling murders. I don't want to drag you into something you don't want to talk about, but they utterly refuse to have a public inquiry into the rape gangs that have decimated so many areas over many, many years. And I think that's why people, Chip, if I'm being honest, are frustrated by what they see as a lack of consistency.
No, I think you're right there, Jeremy. So, for example, although I mentioned, and this is absolutely true, that there were anonymous trolls and bots who were partly giving the disinformation which powered the riots, there were also people who didn't riot, of course, who were fed up. And it's that constituency which is the majority. And, of course, the inquiry which he's now mentioned, after the kicking they got over the rape gangs, is good politics. It's quick and decisive after the charge or the fact that he's now pleaded guilty. Where Starmer comes from on this, and he's absolutely right, is that sometimes due to legal restrictions which would sway judges, you have to be juries, you have to be very careful of what is put into the public domain. Neither does it mean that CT counter-terrorist police involvement does not mean it's terrorism. You're often drawn in when following murders, political murders or mass killings where the motive is uncertain. Now, it's worth saying at the moment, this is still not a terrorist case. So when he went to court previously...
It's not a terrorist case, but he had an Al-Qaeda handbook and he'd been made rising. Now, how is that not a terrorist case? I don't understand that.
You have to separate two things again, Jeremy. There are terrorist charges there, but was the terrorist motivation in the killings? What the 13th of November said was that the stabbings were alleged to have been not in furtherance of terrorism, and that murder and the attempted murder charges are not alleged to have a terrorist connection.
But Yvette Cooper said in the House of Commons this afternoon he will be treated as a terrorist in jail.
Well, what will come out is when he is sentenced on Thursday, there are often cases when when it is unclear, and therefore the judge makes a determination on what he thinks is the predominant thing. This is what happened, for example, after the Hartlepool killing on the 15th of October 23. You'll remember that was a week after the 7th of October. it was uncertain, and it was the judge who made that determination. That is what I think will happen on Thursday. But he will also probably, I think, mention something about the mental health issues. Now, I know people don't like this, but again, it came out in August that this guy was on the autism spectrum disorder.
I think you can be, I think you can have mental health and still be a terrorist. Sorry.
You can, absolutely. And there have been lots of cases of that in the last few years.
I hope that isn't an excuse that is used to let him get away with what was a heinous crime. Just one thing, Chip, and it's really interesting to get a different perspective. You made a point, and this is the one final thing that I would say to you. You say that the lawyer that Starmer is will know that there are certain things you cannot be putting in the public domain. I put this to you, Major General Chip Chapman. The day he stood up and politicised those riots by saying these people were far right, despite the fact that he told us there were no police, no judges and no prison spaces, quite rightly, before you jump at me, within a few hours, certainly 24, people were rounded up on Sky Television, tried and put in jail. Do you not think him calling them far-right thugs, some of whom you've just admitted were just hacked off with what was going on, do you not think that prejudiced their trial? Because I absolutely think it did. So there's a difference, isn't there? What is the difference?
Well, probably not. I mean, some of those were racist gang violence. I mean, attacking asylum hotels, even if you don't like them being...
Yeah, but writing stuff on social media that is unfair and wrong and being put in prison for 15 months for it, to me, I think this is another issue. And I get, listen, I hope this guy rots in hell for all eternity. I think it's heinous and I think it's horrible. I think we have to learn from it. But I do think that there was, at that moment, I'm afraid, again, like the police, a two-tier approach. If you are saying, I can't say anything because of this trial, why did you call all those people on the streets far-right thugs? Because I had calls from people who were just frustrated. I remember a nurse saying, I'm sick and tired of immigration, I'm sick and tired of this government. I now can't say that for fear of being labelled a far-right thug. Remember that call?
Yeah, that probably is true on the call, but that's not why you're put in prison. You don't have to attend a riot to be charged with conspiracy to riot. Yep. You can be guilty of encouraging it.
Do you think it was too... Do you think that... Do you see the criticism from people? If he couldn't speak about that man being a terrorist for fear of jeopardising his case, but he can label everybody far right who took to the streets?
Yeah, I think you have to, when you're a leader, you have to be careful of the language you use. And I think he could have been more careful on that occasion. As I said, I think it was a complex Venn diagram of people who were involved in the Southport and wider riots at the time.
Finally, before you go, great to have you. What did you make of Donald Trump yesterday?
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting 4 years. It would be lovely if he can bring universal peace to the world. I do worry slightly about American exceptionalism. I do really want a rules-based international order. But if I've got something on my Christmas list for 2025 on my bingo card, if he can bring a just peace to Ukraine, I'd be very content.
Good man, thank you. So good to have you on. A good perspective. Major General Chip Chapman, 5:45 on Drive. Talk, the home of common sense and free speech. The phone lines for the break. In Northampton, Tracy, 2 minutes. What you got?
What I've got, why that donut stood up yesterday and was saying what he was saying, I had to turn it off. What I want to know is, right, if the Labour Party can see how us British people, English people, live in this country, what we think of that donut, why are they supporting him? Why are they not saying, right, vote of confidence, he's not doing what the public
Who's the donut?
Keir Starmer. Oh. That's all. He's a donut.
He's a donut.
Absolute donut.
Did you watch Trump's...
He stands up there...
Donut.
And I'll tell you what, he stands up there and he don't know what he's talking about.
Now, many people would say, just hear me out, all the lefties who slag me off every day, they would say, that Tracy doesn't know what she's talking about. Keir Starmer's a career politician, he knows he's a lawyer and all that. I've said, and I don't care who slags me off, that one of the most important things about politics is surely to have your hand on the pulse of what British people are thinking. And I know, whatever anybody on the left or even the far right says to me, that the British people are fed up with being taken for mugs. What did you make when you watched Donald Trump put Americans first yesterday? Did you watch the speech?
I bloody loved it. I wanted to be an American. I wanted to move to America.
I suspect the left would be delighted if you did, love. I might come with you.
I would love to move. He's. Do you know what? It's like that man said. He's gone in there. He's put 4 things in action, and it's already being done.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I'm going to move on. Trace in Northampton, thank you very much indeed. Listen, we've got sport with Sam Ellard in the next hour as well. Loads and loads of your calls, whatever you want to make. Southport, Donald Trump, 0344 499 1000. We're coming back in 3.
I'm asking you about Keir Starmer. I'm asking about the political decision of what...
You asked me about Keir Starmer
yes, and you talked about the police. Richard, I'm not sure we're getting very...
Because we talked about the definition of a terror offence and what Starmer had said about that. And I'm trying to talk about the ridiculous accusations that have been made and show how they don't have a factual basis. And the way that people manage to make these conspiracy theories seem like they're sticking is by mixing up very different things.
OK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back 8 minutes to 6 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Very good evening to Jonathan Lupton, one of the greatest golfers ever to grace the fairways of this country, listening in Newcastle. I'll be up there next weekend. JG, thank you for... JL even. Thanks for... He teaches head. Lovely man, Jonathan. Jez, Ed Miliband won't drill, baby, drill. He'll chill, granny, chill. I love it. Trump's speech was amazing. If I was younger, says Alison, I'd move to America. Mr. Kyle, why is a terror attack? Why is it a terror attack when a politician is killed and yet these poor little girls... It isn't. It just shows what the elite think their lives are worth more, and they don't give a damn about the children in this country. Victoria's in Cambridge. Yvette Cooper has just said that he will be treated as a terrorist in prison. You're quite right. Regarding the inquiry into that monster, departments will be blamed, but not individuals who have already been promoted. Hello to Jane and Milton Keynes. Jez, I love the show. Please, can you ask Nigel to get those political prisoners out of prison? Listen, there's a lot he will do. John from Newport. Jez is a 48-year-old man on the 29th of January. Wish me happy birthday. Literally everyone I know hates Starmer. My parents, my grandparents, even my niece and my nephew. Everyone hates Starmer. That was my crap Newport injection. election. But apparently they love Trump. Stuart's in Ramsden. Forget a line in the sand. Two-tier Keir should put the Navy in the Channel. How can you pretend to protect the British public until you stop the bloody boats? Not all will have bad intentions, but it only takes a few, as we've seen, so why take the risk? He, says Stuart in Ramsden, is very strong. Andy in Darlington, final one. Jez, Labour and the Tories, Uniparty, more like two cheeks of the same bum. You know what's been between those cheeks? Ed Davey, very good. Great show, keep up the good work. Andy in Darlington, 0344 419 1000, text to 87222. 8 minutes to 6 o'clock. Push the button, aim sport.
Sport Summary on Talk.
He is my illegitimate son, a young man whose broadcasting career has taken off as mine heads to the twilight of mediocrity. Sam Ellar, good evening.
That's my favourite Jeremy Kyle introduction yet, but that's not true. You're going all right, mate. You're hanging in there. In fact, you know what? I'm going to give you some credit. You're doing very, very well. Not that you need praise from a kid like me, but you're going all right, mate.
Good way to treat your daddy. How are you going, son? Right, let's talk sport. What?
No, go on. Let's get straight into business, JK.
This is breaking news. We've been talking about social media and the impact that this can have. Quite seriously, a 17-year-old boy has just been arrested on suspicion of sending seriously malicious communications in connection with the investigation into social media abuse against Kai Havertz, the Arsenal forward, and his wife, Sophia. Hertfordshire police just tell us. Quite right that they should do something, whatever the age, to be able to go on social media and make ridiculous and horrible and vile threats. It needs to be policed, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this came after this came on January the 12th, these messages. This came after Arsenal's game against Manchester United in the FA Cup, where they got knocked out. And Kai Havertz, he had a bad game. He had a disappointing game. There's no getting away from that. But I'm not even going to read out, Jeremy, some of the messages I've got in front of me that I've seen, because they're quite frankly disgusting. But if people want to see them, they can go onto social media. Jez, look, we all love our football clubs. We're all passionate about it. We all love winning. We all hate losing. It hurts people. I get they're passionate about it. But to go online and to send these abusive messages to the players, to their families, to whoever, it's just absolutely disgusting. There's no place for society.
You call me cynical. I've got a slightly different theory. I don't condone it at all. I'm glad the police are doing something about it. But I do always say that, unfortunately, if you're earning 250 grand a week, whether you're on television or playing sport, there will be people, right? You can't be that naive that you think that everybody's going to go, oh, you're fantastic, you'll have a bad game. I honestly, keyboard warriors like that, I wouldn't give anything for, mate. I'm not bothered. If you've got a strong family and good friends, get your head. Honestly, not interested. I get it about that boy, but Kai Havertz is a fantastic footballer. What does that kid know, Jack? Just go and play another game. Can't be doing with it.
No, but Jez, do you know what? There's nothing. You know what? You're right. If you're a Premier League footballer, you're earning big money, you're playing for one of the biggest football clubs in the world, you're going to take criticism. I think the footballers are aware of that. They're not stupid. But there's criticism.
Yeah.
Then there's stuff being sent to your wife about your kids and threatening behaviour.
Had it.
I'm not one of these where you can't say you can't tell a footballer that, you know, he should have scored that or he's not very good at that.
I've got you.
That's one thing. But this sort of abuse, these sort of messages, this has gone too far.
OK, I'm not going to disagree. I'm slightly in awe because the King has just walked into the outdoor studio. Michael Graham will be on this show very quickly. Premier League review last night. Chelsea 3, Wolves 1. Chelsea, I don't know, is it going OK? I'm still mourning West Ham being crap on Sunday, or whatever day it was.
No, it's not going OK. I only felt like it was a couple of weeks ago that Chelsea were in a title race. They had an awful Christmas period where they went 5 games without winning. They did get back to winning ways last night, but it was a struggle, Jez. I watched the game. They beat Wolves by 3 goals to 1. They win at half-time at 1-1. It's all just gone a little bit sloppy for Chelsea at the moment. Now, they've got some injuries, certainly defensively. I think we've always thought with Chelsea, they're going forward, they've got a lot of quality in the team, but defensively, there's been a real problem. So much so that a young kid called Trevor Chalobah, they sent out on loan at the start of the season, has now been immediately recalled to the team, straight back into the team.
And was the best player on the pitch. Player of the match last night. Champions League.
Very good. He's been excellent at Crystal Palace. And you know, it's laughable, Jazz, that they sent him out on loan in the first place. They beat Wolves by 3 goals to 1. Chelsea 4th in the table, in the top 4, 2 points above Man City, who they go to this weekend. As for Wolves, 17th. 1 place out of the relegation zone, but level on points with Ipswich.
You're doing a very good job. Your mum would be proud of you. Champions League preview tonight. Liverpool, I mean, amazing, versus Lille, and Monaco versus Aston Villa. Wins for both?
Just because Mike's in the outdoor studio, you haven't got to make mum jokes and try and show off in front of the
Your mum and I go
presenter.
back a long way. Why does that have to be such an issue for you?
It's not funny. It's pathetic. It's immature. It's embarrassing. Grow up. As for
your mother doesn't think it's embarrassing. She loves it.
Honestly. Anyway, I'll keep this short and sweet. We've got a break.
That's what your mother... No, I'm joking. Crack on.
Seriously, don't go too far, Jez, okay?
Never have.
After Champions League, Aston Villa, they're playing right now. Their game started at 5:45.
Yep.
They're 1-0 down to Monaco.
They're down to Monaco. Down?
Monaco beating Aston Villa by 1 goal. One goal to nil. Why do you make this more difficult than what it needs to be?
Because it's fun.
We got two, fair play, I'll give you that. 2 more games left of this new league phase. It's important to finish in the top 8 because you go straight through to the last 16. If you're not in the top 8, make sure you're in the top 24. Then you go into the playoff. Aston Villa went into tonight 6th in the table. They've had a really, really good league phase so far. Victory will all but secure their place in the top 8. 1 down, though. As for Liverpool, they're the only team with 6 wins from 6. They take on Lille this evening. That one is an 8 o'clock kickoff. But yeah, Aston Villa 1-0 down at the moment.
I'm going to make you laugh. Our boss, the wonderful Denny, called me up today and I walked past his office and he went, "Can I just say that was brilliant yesterday when you were covering the Donald Trump inauguration?" And I was quite full of myself. And then he just said in a very loud voice, "At one point you said, oh, now they're interviewing a man with a red tie and somebody's about to do karaoke." Listen, I do my best, Sam. I mean, look at his face. I do my best. I mean, I'm getting old, son, aren't I?
I don't get it. Is that a joke? I don't get that.
Get off. Listen, are you back tomorrow or are you what are you doing tomorrow?
No, I'll be in the studio tomorrow.
How's it going online? All right.
What do you mean online?
Girlfriend search.
I don't go online. I just go into, I'm natural, into bars, into restaurants. Hi, how you doing? Can I buy it? I'm not on any dating apps.
Still single then, yeah?
At the moment.
Brilliant. He's back tomorrow with Sports Single Sam Hillard. Thank you very much indeed. Right into the final hour of Drive, and we will kick off with the man who is the king of this station, Michael Graham. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk, and the news at 6 is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back 3 minutes past 6 into the final hour of Drive for Tuesday. We're live across the UK on the home of common sense, a phrase that the 47th President of the United States coined yesterday. Am I ready with it? Have we got it? No, you need a minute to get it ready. Good God, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is quality and there is quality. The king of breakfast broadcasting is here. Michael Graham, good afternoon.
It's in the system, you know, because he said it's revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense. It's common sense.
Mate,
this is a story that I have been selling, I kid you not, for 5 or 6 years. Ever
Before
since
I was
started.
even here.
Yeah, when you came here,
Yep.
one of the reasons you said you wanted to come here was because you said talk is the home of common sense.
Absolutely.
People are sick to death of it. You know, you and I have been talking about it. The crusade has been going on for about 5 or 6 years, long before the Conservatives went wrong, long before Keir Starmer got elected. We knew that common sense is what the people of this country want, and it's what the people of this country demand.
So Michael Graham started this 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Julia, of course, as well.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I mean, it's extraordinary. I had goosebumps anyway.
Yeah.
And then Donald Trump did this.
Today, I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense.
Honestly,
Come on.
common
It's common sense because everybody knows what it is. If you ask anyone in the street today, this morning, this afternoon, this evening, what is common sense? And they'll just go, well, you know it when you see it. You know, it's not allowing men with penises into female toilets or female changing rooms.
Shock
You
horror.
know,
There are two sexes, male and female. I'm applauding. I'm in the studio
it's
doing
about
that.
not pretending that you can be a cat and you can send your child to a school who recognises that you're a cat.
Yeah.
It's about the world being a place where everybody feels good and everybody feels safe, and you don't have to get a job based on whether you're black, brown, you know, lesbian,
Coloured, blind and based on merit. How good was that?
Incredible. You know, when a president of the United States actually has to be applauded by saying there are two genders, male and female, you're kind of going, how have we got to this place where that was even contentious?
Something outrageous happened to me earlier. Ian Collins used a very good word.
The housewife's choice?
I'm actually being really complimentary. I thought he used a word that I think is absolutely spot on, Ian did. He said the difference between Trump and that drip, and I was texting you this morning, is that Donald Trump has his hand on the pulse of what the American people want. When I was in the car on the school run this morning and listening to you, and I texted you, didn't I? I'd watched Trump and, listen, he's flawed, and there are things he said and done I don't agree with, and I put that out there. But he absolutely is delivering already to the American people what he said, and they voted in the popular vote by millions. And then I tune into that drip this morning, Starmer. I managed to get Nigel Farage on
I heard.
about an hour ago.
Well done, you.
I'm going to play a clip to you because this is what he thought. I mean, the whole Southport thing is... You know me, I don't sit and out there and work out what I'm going to say, but I couldn't work out in my mind why Keir Starmer hadn't spoken out. And then I had the theory, which I put to Nigel, which is... if he'd just come out and said, right, Keir Starmer, back in July, if he'd said, look, it's not an illegal, it's a terrorist, and we're dealing with that, that would have quelled what happened.
Yes.
But it created a vacuum. The online stuff kicked off. People went on the streets. He then brought the police out, arrested them, called them far right, by the way, which could jeopardise their bloody trials as well. Let's make that point. I would say that the Prime Minister was responsible for, if you like, fanning the flames of those riots by not quashing it when he could have done.
Completely. And what he did wrong today, in my view, was that he tried to sort of finesse it, right? In my view, you know, I've worked with gangsters in my world. You have as well. We've all known some very interesting people. You know, tell the truth. The way that you gain the popularity of the people, the way that you gain the trust of the people is to tell the truth. He came out today and he didn't tell the truth.
No.
He made out that, and I've been doing this a long time, right? I've been a journalist for many, many decades. I know exactly what we can say about contempt of court.
Absolutely.
I know exactly what we can say about people who have been charged with criminal activity, and he's got it wrong. And this is the beginning of the end for Keir
But there are
Starmer.
other examples of where they have said something, and surely if he said...
When Joe Cox was murdered, right, they called that a terrorist attack as soon as it had happened, right? When the Manchester Arena bomb happened, they called that a terrorist attack as soon as it happened. They can do it when they want to do it.
So why didn't they do it, in
your
your
opinion? They didn't do it,
opinion?
in my opinion, because they were frightened that the people of this country would react, because the people of this country are sick to death of encouraging terrorists to come to this country and do us harm as ordinary citizens of the British
Because his family
community.
were immigrants, is that what you're saying?
Because his family were immigrants and they didn't want to see the name that looked foreign, because it might cause people to act. And I said this morning, at no time after 7/7, after the Manchester Arena bombings, after everything that happened after 9/11, no member of any Muslim community has ever been damaged or hurt by a response to a terrorist activity that has happened, right? When 7/7 happened, they were terrorists. When they tried to do it again a month later, they were terrorists. Suddenly we can't call this guy, Radical Barnett, a terrorist? Do me a favour.
Let's have a listen to what Nigel Farage said about Southport earlier on this show. It was an exclusive. Have a listen.
The Prime Minister couldn't come clean. He continued with the insistence that we deserve to know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't even himself say it was a terror attack. Well, let's have a think about this, shall we? Al-Qaeda training manuals, chemical weapons. I mean, what more do you need? What has happened over this Southport incident is one of the biggest cover-ups I've seen in my lifetime.
Let's bring Isabel Oakeshott in, our international editor. Isabel, Mike, have you got an earpiece in? You have. Isabel, welcome to the show. Thank you for yesterday. I think you should know that the audience spiked when you came on at 5:30, much more so than when Richard Tice came on an hour later. I just thought I'd make that point. Can I pick your brains on... Nigel was on the show. Can I pick your brains on what you make of the Southport thing? Because one of the things that came out with talking to Nigel and callers was this for both of you. So it was all right for Keir Starmer to say today, we couldn't say anything, this could have prejudiced a trial, but I'm going to label everybody that went on the streets or dared to complain about this situation as far right. Would that not prejudice their trials, by the way?
Oh, completely. And he said more than that, didn't he? I mean, he basically convicted all those so-called far-right people before they'd had a moment whether to plead guilty or not. You know, the thing that's really particularly getting to me about what I agree with Nigel Farage and many other people has been a gigantic cover-up. It's the photograph that they put out of Axel Rudikabana after this happened. They put out a photograph very deliberately of this young man, this young terrorist, as I think we can all agree he really is.
And she's just said, Yvette Cooper, he'll be treated like a terrorist in jail.
Yeah.
Well, they put out a photo of him as a really cute-looking schoolboy, and that was downright dishonest because they had the recent image of him. They had the police mugshot. Why did they do that? They did that wholly to deceive the British people. And I listened to Sir Keir Starmer from start to finish with his speech, and again, there's something that really annoys me about that. For him to stand up there and say, you know, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the children of our country are fully protected from dangerous elements. Well, he's already not doing that. Two ways to do that, really basic ways to do that: stop the boats and deport foreign criminals.
And there's also a glaring, I'm with you on all of that, but both of you, there's a glaring disparity here, because straight away today Yvette Cooper on the back foot, he's been dragged in front of the national media, says national inquiry, and yet we have rape gangs in this country destroying children's lives. And if you want to protect children, Sir Keir Starmer, why the bloody hell, Mike, are they saying we're not going to have an inquiry into that? Right. I'll tell you why I think, and I'm getting worse by the day, I think that's because they'll lose the Muslim vote in many Labour constituencies.
I think it's worse than that. I think it's worse, and Isabel knows this better than I do. We've been talking about this for many, many weeks and many, many months. You know, Keir Starmer is not just frightened of losing the Muslim vote, he's frightened of being considered to be somebody who is not embracing of multiculturalism, right? This multiculturalism nonsense that everybody's been sold for the best part of the last 20-odd years by Tony Blair, by David Cameron, by Rishi Sunak, and now by Boris Johnson as well, and now by Keir Starmer. You know, everything's great. We should welcome everyone into this country. Forget about, you know, the fact that white culture is the dominant dominant culture in Britain. Let's just mix it up. Let's just bring in some Pakistanis who think that actually it's okay to rape children. Let's bring in some Africans who think it's okay to chop people's arms off with machetes. Let's bring in some people from China who think it's okay to actually enslave women and make them work as prostitutes, pretending to be in a nail bar. I'm sorry, you know, we have been too slow to recognise that the rest of the world, which is absolutely and utterly brutal to other human beings, should not be in this country. I would say it's time now we shut the borders. We take Trump's lead, shut the bloody borders, stop bringing these people in, kick them out. They're criminals. We don't want them. We don't want their culture. Just get lost.
You see, now, Isabel, one of the reasons that I do this job, and I love it, is for moments like this, because you could not, well, he'll disagree, but we couldn't even say this 5 years ago, right? The fact of the matter is there is undoubtedly there is a feeling in this country that what Mike's just said and what I've just said and what you're talking about, genuinely, people are not seeing those comments as outrageous anymore.
Yeah.
And it's easy, isn't it, for the elites, the liberals, the lefties, the bedwetters, the Starmers in Islington to say, oh, they're all far right. No, they're not far right. They're hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding British people who have paid all their lives and they find themselves 8th in the queue. And I think that this, I don't know whether it's reform, don't upset, I don't know if it's reform, I hope it's reform, but something's going to change in this country. I really genuinely believe it.
I think that we are at breaking point as a country, and I think we saw that with the summer riots, and we always must say that we don't condone the riots. It's boring to say it, but we have to. But those riots were an expression of pent up fury about the overall wider situation. They may have been born of ignorance, and indeed in many cases they were born of ignorance about what had actually happened and who was involved, but they spoke to a much deeper malaise, a completely profound exasperation on the part of, frankly, what I think is millions of people in our country.
I think it's really dangerous, which is why listening to Richard yesterday and Nigel today and last week Rupert Lowe, I'm not even experience of outside life, yes, but I honestly believe that, and you just said it, I want to see politicians, I said this an hour ago, so forgive me, I want politicians to come out and go, right, I'm standing for election, I've been divorced twice, I did that when I was 18, I lost a job because I said something wrong, I like a drink, I have a bet, I occasionally argue with the wife. This is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you with me. There'll be good days and bad days. I've got warts and all, but if you come with me, we'll get there. I think the time is coming that somebody like Donald Trump, if he can do what he did in America, when I say the time is coming, people accuse me of all sorts of things, but I know what I feel.
You're right.
I think there's just something happening.
No, you're totally right. Look at Donald Trump yesterday. You know, as I said, you know, he adopted the common sense approach to world view, right? There is no question that it's intelligent and common sense to say that a woman is only a woman if she doesn't have a penis. I mean, it seems ridiculous to actually have to say it, but he had to say it. There are only two genders. There are two genders, male and female. Brilliant. You know, he said we need to close our borders. We need to get rid of the 750,000 comical, you know, criminals who are walking the streets of America who are actually dangerous. You know, the idea that we have to make a point to say that this is somehow a new thing is ridiculous. You know, we all know what's gone wrong in Britain. Everybody knows what's happened. We've let too many people in who do not adhere to the way of life that we would like to have, right? When you go around this country, you go to Newcastle a lot, I go to Sussex, I go to Kent, Isabel goes to parts of, you know, Oxfordshire, the home counties. You know, those are very different places.
And
there are
Boston
very different.
And Skegness occasionally.
And she goes to Boston and Skegness occasionally. You know, I'm not going to, you know, argue about how many times she goes there. That wouldn't be right. But the point is, the bottom line is, you know, the cities of this country have become absolute hellholes.
They have.
Everybody knows that. Yeah. I can take you to Whitechapel, where the underground has a sign in Bangladeshi. I don't want to live in a land where the sign for Mile End Station is in Bangladeshi. I'm not in Dhaka. I don't care whether people from Bangladesh come here, but they need to learn English and they need to learn how to get on the train.
Can I come in here then and just tell you about Boston? And last time I was there, which was not that long ago, the rather beautiful Christmas tree in the town square had a kind of wrapping round it, which said Happy Christmas primarily in Bulgarian. I'm not sure they bothered with English. I just don't think we should be I mean, Boston is overrun by Bulgarians, by the way, and I don't use that word lightly. It is overrun by people who are absolutely on the take with the benefit system, and there'll be more to be exposed on that in due course. And, you know, this is wrong. We shouldn't be using taxpayers' money either. Hundreds of millions of it across the public sector, providing translation services in the NHS. Our NHS can barely afford to treat people.
Oh, but hold on, because now you've touched upon my favourite. But if you come on a dinghy, apart from getting a hotel, you'll get a GP in your hotel tomorrow morning. And if you've paid your stamp for 50 years and you've got gout or you've got lymphedema or something, you know, you can't even get a bloody appointment. Let me ask you just both very quickly to listen to this other bit. I thought I'd be very brave at the end. I said to Nigel, come on, let's have the truth. What happened to you and Elon Musk? Did you see him? Ever listen? This was great.
But we were chatting quite a lot during the time. We're desperately trying to get together to have a meeting. It didn't quite make it happen, but we're on good speaking terms. We have a different point of view. You know, he views Tommy Robinson in a different light to me. He's even going to help fund some of his legal expenses. Fine, do what you want, Elon. That's great. The issue is that, you know, I have never wanted... There is a genuine far right, okay? They're very, very small in number, but I've never, ever wanted them to be part of this political party. And I've never thought Tommy Robinson is someone that I should open my arms up to and embrace. So, fine, some people see him as a hero for standing up and talking about grooming gangs. I just don't think he's right for me politically. And I think we've sort of reached a point where Elon and I now understand each other on that.
Isabel, your response to that?
Well, my response to that is with impeccable timing. Today, the BBC released, you guessed it, an expose, an undercover investigation into the far right in Britain. What a day to do that when there are so many other things they could have released their own undercover investigation into. Trust the BBC always to target one side of politics, acting as if some very extreme fringe of the type that Nigel just referred is some kind of mainstream problem in our politics. It isn't. Nigel's made his decision on Tommy Robinson. The party leadership is not going to budge on that.
I think it's really interesting as well. I put to him, there will be people who support Tommy Robinson. There will be people inside Reform who support Tommy Robinson. But surely one of the things about a leader, and Trump again would be an example of this, there are times when you have to say, no, I don't like that. This is my decision. It goes back to what I was just saying. There are plenty more people who have said to me in the last few weeks that Nigel Farage showed real leadership over Tommy Robinson.
He absolutely has. He's shown it not only over Tommy Robinson, but also over Elon Musk. You know, he hasn't capitulated to Elon Musk. He's a very powerful man, very much a friend of Donald Trump. You know, very much a part of inside of the rotunda. I mean, lots of people on the left are making hay about the fact that Nigel Farage was not inside the rotunda. You know, Boris Johnson was.
As an ex-Prime Minister.
I don't think that matters, right? The point is that Nigel Farage...
Again, Pulse, speak to the British people.
Yeah, Nigel Farage is building a party. He needs to do it in a particular way. He doesn't need ragtag and bobtail joining in. He doesn't need criminals joining in. He doesn't need maniacs like Lawrence Fox. He doesn't need idiots like Tommy Robinson. He needs to show proper leadership, and he also needs to sometimes say to people like Elon Musk, sorry, mate, yeah, you're not welcome here. We don't need you in Britain. Yep. You know, you can have your opinions. Very, very happy to hear them.
Yep.
Very happy to have you send us money if you want to, but we're not going to dance to your tune. And I think Nigel Farage has come out of all of this as a true leader and a future Prime Minister of this country.
Very interesting. Isabel, thank you so much. Yes, the studio can confirm that the show peaked yesterday when Isabel came on, so we're hoping for the same today. Certainly more than Richard Tice. Mikey, back in... You never stop working, man. We've got a busy day tomorrow.
Wow, yes.
We've got Clash, we've got Plank of the Week,
Yep.
we've got the show and everything. Are you all right? You had what you been doing?
I went out for a slightly long lunch today with a former friend of mine from the Daily Mirror.
A former friend? What, you got drunk and they're no longer your friend?
No, we split the bill. We're plotting for the future, you know.
Good.
Podcasts, stage shows, that kind of thing. You know, he's a bit of a lefty, but he's an acceptable face of leftyism.
Oh, right,
and,
okay.
you know, because we enjoy that. And so I'll go home tonight. I'll have a couple of glasses of wine. I had some champagne yesterday when Donald Trump was there.
I love him.
I just literally popped the champagne as he was being inaugurated. I thought, imagine being
Well, the people maybe not know, you have family in America for years.
I have family in America for years. My son lives in California, my sister lives in Connecticut, and, you know, even she, who's a lifelong Democrat, was going, this is great. She was going, thank God he's ditched the DEI stuff. He's ditched the
She's
transgender.
a lifelong Democrat.
She's always been a lifelong Democrat.
I think you need to absolutely move her out of your family instantly.
No, I've won 2 bets with her about Donald Trump. She didn't think he would win the first time. $300.
I don't think he thought he would win the first time.
Second time, another $300. So far, I'm $600 up.
I thought yesterday, just to finish, I just thought there was a different aura about him, as if he understands Washington, knew what was coming, and I'm sure there will be things that happen that will all go, whoa, but I thought he was right on message.
Listen, we don't have to agree with everything he does, but you know what I'm very happy about? The glamour has returned to American politics. I mean, you see Melania, all of the Trump women, you know, the Times even did a piece about this. It's all about the boot in heels. It's all about proper fashion. It's all about looking good.
I used to have the boot in male shoes.
Did you?
When I was on the television.
With the red soles and everything.
I remember going to, like, the National Television Awards. That's when I knew that I'd arrived.
That's when you know you've gone too far.
That's when you know. I genuinely, I couldn't move my face. My teeth were newly plastic and I had red, shiny bottom shoes on. No. Very happy to be here in my jeans.
Yeah. Exactly.
Tomorrow morning, Morning Glory 6 o'clock, the best breakfast show in the land with the legend that is Mike Graham, and coming soon on ITV, an acknowledgement of that live on Saturday night. We'll tell you more. We're coming back in 3. Don't go anywhere.
I'm asking you about Keir Starmer. I'm asking about the political decision of what...
You asked me about Keir Starmer.
Yes, and you talked about the police. Richard, I'm not sure we're getting very...
Because you talked about the definition of a terror offence and what Starmer had said about that. And I'm trying to talk about the ridiculous accusations that have been made and show how they don't have a factual basis. And the way that people manage to make these conspiracy theories seem like they're sticking is by mixing up very different things.
OK.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Interesting comment from Isabel Oakeshott. The BBC on the day the rest of the world is talking about the Southport killings and Donald Trump's inauguration as the 47th president has done an expose into the far right. Dave Turner, good afternoon. Message for Farage. I'm so looking forward to seeing you up there making a speech like Trump. Shame we need to wait so long. That's Dave in Portsmouth. Sarah's in North Yorkshire. Jez, why can Donald Trump shut down a border within a few hours of becoming president and we can't stop the bloody boats? My feeling is that Starmer doesn't want to do any of it. There's a surprise. I think you might be right. Hello to Mick. Starmer is not a good role model for our youth. He opens his gob and complete lies and duplicitously effortlessly pours out. His backbenchers know, but they live in fear of losing their jobs. Andrew Beresford, or Besford, I love Nigel and Reform, but we need to know their vision for the UK. I feel they might not have the policies. Let me know. Derek, why Starmer will not give a public inquiry into the rape gangs? You've got it spot on. Labour have got a real problem with the Muslim vote. That's why they will not come out. Hello to James in Cardiff. My fear now is that Starmer will use this awful situation to create laws that will turn this country into a truly Orwellian nightmare. We don't need new laws. The system failed, did not react when warned about this monster. We're delighted to welcome next on the show Shadow Crime, Policing and Fire Minister, Conservative MP, one of not many left. He made it into the 121. Conservative Stockton West, Matt Vickers. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. All good, all good.
Well, I'm in a slightly agitated mood today. So let's ask you first about...
Not like you. It's not like you.
No, but more so than usual. More so than usual. So be ready. Donald Trump, the inauguration yesterday. What did you make of it?
But you know what? It was show business, wasn't it? And I think actually one of the things about this election in America, about a president like Trump coming back again, actually when you look at how many people voted for him over there, he's captured the views of the American people.
Collins put it brilliantly earlier, Matt. Ian Collins put it brilliantly earlier, which is I would put to all British politicians, and I know what you'll say, but it's true. Donald Trump won the popular vote, nearly 90 million votes, because he, whether you like him or loathe him, and I'm talking to the audience, has got his finger on the pulse of what the American public want. And that, for me, is the challenge for all the political parties. It's not going to work anymore to say, oh, it's far right to be concerned about illegal migration or horrendous terrorist crimes or knife. Actually, a lot of people in the United Kingdom, millions, are concerned, Matt.
I think the other thing about the Trump election, actually, the fact that the guy was the president, lost the seat, lost the post, came back again, proved that the grass wasn't so much greener on the other side, whatever was happening when Biden was elected. They didn't want any more of that, and they saw the light. Hopefully, we might sort ourselves out and give them something worth voting for next time. I think it's, you know what, like him, love him or loathe him, he's going to add a bit of excitement to proceedings over the next few years, isn't he?
Oh, my God, newsworthy or what? So I go and do the show, and I have Trump, goosebumps, go home, wake up this morning, I'm on the school run, Mike's on the radio, obviously, and I hear this dull, dreary, reactive, not proactive Prime Minister hauled in front of the national media, admitting that he knew about the Southport killers' extremist history and terror links. Now, I'll try and get this out as quickly as possible. Do I put this to Nigel Farage? I put it to you, Matt Vickers. Here's what I don't understand still, 2.5 hours into this show. I understand that in terms of the court case, you wouldn't want to give too much information out. However, at that moment, when Farage stood up and said, I think it's more potentially to do with terrorism, he wasn't allowed to have a debate by the Speaker. He wasn't allowed to ask a question by the Speaker. It was shut down. Nobody said anything. Today, Starmer admitted that he knew. I have a suggestion. If he'd come out and said at that moment, look, it is terrorist linked, as they've done for other things, by the way, your government as well, but we can't give out any more information. Surely the logical comment on that would have been that that would have shut down all the stuff online, the dreadful stuff that created all that tension, spilled out onto the streets. He politicised that, called it far right, managed to arrest, try and put in jail within 24 hours. Is it possible to suggest that the Prime Minister, if he'd acted differently, he would not have gained as much as he did? And did he politicise a terrible, terrible situation, Matt Vickers, for his own ends?
I think the top and bottom of it is the public can only have trust in something that talks to them, communicates with them and holds the line. We saw, the independent reviewer of terror legislation has said you have to tell people so much of the information in order to keep public trust. If people start panicking, then that's when these things appear online. People then have to make their own guesstimates, and the next time something happens, the public will not believe that.
Then why didn't he? Why wasn't he more honest, in your opinion?
Well, it gets worse than that, doesn't it? Because Angela Rayner went out there, and when people were talking about this being a terror incident, she said that was fake news. It was the stuff of conspiracy.
She said that, did she?
It was the 31st of July.
And the Home Secretary today says he will be treated as a terrorist in prison. Yep. Yvette Cooper said that this afternoon. Wow.
And on the 31st of July, Rayner said that the Southport attack, suggestions that it was terror-related, were fake news.
Wow.
Conspiracy theory stuff. Well, if the Deputy Prime Minister is telling people that it is not terrorist-related, and we get a few months down the line, it turns out, oh yeah, it is. We can't completely deceive the British public at every turn. Otherwise, what chance is there of anybody being able to believe anything the government says? That's if they still believe. I
wish we'd had you on at 4.
That's
right. That's fascinating that Rayner said it was fake news, and they would have known at that point. So then I go further, Matt. Right? You're the Shadow Crime Policing and Fire Minister. We've talked a lot about the rape gangs that seem to have perpetrated a lot more than 6 towns across the UK. I personally believe it's a massive cover-up by all sorts of people, and I believe that this goes higher and deeper than any of us dare imagine. A complete refusal to have a public inquiry, and yet today, Outcomes Yvette Cooper announced, is quite rightly, can I say, a public inquiry into the Southport killings. There is, of course, on this station and in this studio, a belief that the reason Labour won't have a public inquiry into the rape gangs is because for fear that might lose them a certain vote in certain Labour seats north of Watford Gap, the Muslim vote. I'm being totally straight with you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's what lots of people are saying and thinking, and probably, if you heard from Simon Danchuk there, where he talked about the fact he came out, criticised what was going on in his own patch, and was told by officials in his own party to shut up, to keep quiet about the ethnicity of individuals involved. Like it is a cover-up, and people are now concerned about what role the police had, about what role elected officials had. That's what makes it really, really sick. The fact that these people are put in a position of trust and let people down is what really takes it to everybody's heart. And it just undermines any trust you might have in councils, in police officials in those parts of the world. It's very scary. That's why we need the inquiry. Because if it's not the case, then the inquiry will find that out. We'll find out who went wrong, who did and didn't do wrong. We'll get consequences for those people, but more importantly, it allows us to trust in those institutions and organisations once again.
And talk about trust in institutions and individuals. I go back to Starmer this morning, and I tried really hard. I started thinking, right, OK, this is quite prime ministerial. He's coming out. He's saying. And then he did it for me, and he always does it. He said, I couldn't have said. Well, I couldn't have said more because it would have prejudiced this case. OK. But he called everybody that disagreed or went on the streets, and there is a far-right element. Nigel Farage is right, and they are not welcome, and they should have been arrested. But there were plenty of people, frustrated, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens of this country who were hacked off with what was happening, had read the stuff online, and he said, and I quote Sir Keir Starmer, they're all far-right thugs. So my question to you, Matt Vickers, is surely he could be accused of prejudicing their cases, and they might be in prison, unjustly incarcerated, I don't know, because of what the Prime Minister said about them, but not about a terrorist.
Everything about it undermines public trust. The people who we expect to keep us safe, the people who we expect to maintain law and order, if we can't trust the government, the people at the helm, not to tell us that when we're talking about the facts, that it's a conspiracy theory and fake news, then where on earth do we go? Where do we go when we need it? That's what infuriates people. That's what causes so much tension. That's what causes the complete evaporation of trust in all of our public institutions.
You've had all our producers running around in circles after what you said, that Angela Rayner said that it would be fake news to describe this Southport massacre as terrorist-based. She said that. That's come back and bitten them. She also said in July, ready for this, the English Defence League could be prescribed as a terror organisation in the wake of those riots in Southport. So she was happy to discuss what she believed was terrorism, but not call the actual murderer a terrorist. And I'm not sticking up for the English Defence League, I'm just making a point. Language.
I think the entire thing, when you look at what went on with those riots and the chaos of it and the damage that was done, half of it was just mindless thugs who turned up because they thought there was something.
And they had every right. The government was right to arrest them and absolutely imprison them. But
they're the people who get involved in anything that's going on wrong in any town, anywhere. The mindless, the village idiots who come on and just try to get amongst it and think they can nick something from Greggs because the wind has gone through. Those people are just absolute scroats and deserve, And then at the same time, all of the people who were impacted largely were just law-abiding people going about their business. It's not the homes of, the instigators or the people at the centre of this that got trashed. It's normal working people, usually in tough estates, who are struggling to make ends meet, that got their car smashed up, got their windows put through. In central Middlesbrough, that was the case. Normal people going about their daily lives, and they're at the front end of it.
Does it frustrate you, as a lifelong Conservative and somebody who's always been good enough to come on this station through the highs and the lows of your party, Boris being elected, your own success and then the loss, you've always been straight with us, and I appreciate that. Does it frustrate you that despite what appears to be one of, if not the most unpopular Prime Minister in British political history, despite gaffe after gaffe, that still, and this is a fact, the British people are listening to Nigel Farage and Reform, and they seem impossibly incapable of forgiving the Tories at this moment. Do you understand that? Does it concern you? Is it something that motivates you every day?
I think we stuffed it up, didn't we? We've got to take the lesson that we've been given by the British public. I've just been in there 5 minutes ago debating the ins and outs of what's happening in this country now on illegal immigration, on the use of hotels, having a scrap with Labour. All Labour want to say is, it was terrible under the Tories, so it's not so bad. Actually, the number of people arriving has gone up by 30%. We were closing hotels, they're opening it. People do need to sit down and look at what's gone on, how much worse it's gone, and we need to come back with a real offering. We need to tell, listen to the people, come back with a valuable offering that people want to vote for.
Do you think, very quickly...
Otherwise, the biggest problem is you end up with a Labour government in power forevermore because we fight amongst ourselves and we let the loony lefties take over and we'll be scrapping it out with Farage and never ever form a government ever again.
But do you think, with respect to your new leader, that she's been a bit slow off the mark? Because one of the things that I hear every day, like them or loathe them, 5 Reform MPs are making more noise and getting far more interest. She apparently is making sure that she works out what went wrong. Would it be fair to say that Reform has stolen a march on the Tory party because you seem very slow to come to the table with anything definitive?
We have some very sensible voters out there who want to know that we've crossed the T's and dotted the I's and given some thought to it, and that's what we're doing. We're engaging with people. I've been out on the doorsteps in my constituency all weekend speaking to people. We're engaging with people. We're going to come back with real policies. We're not going to just shoot from the hip, because what's going on now might be very different in a couple of years' time. But yeah, I think we've probably got to engage. We've got to engage more. That's why wonderful people like me come on wonderful shows like this to speak to guys like you.
You're a good man, Matt. Thank you so much indeed, as ever. He's full of it. He could definitely be a presenter. 20 minutes to 7, Talk Drive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 18 minutes to 7. We're live across the UK. Talk Drive is on until 7 o'clock when I'm going out with a man who's had his head shaven. That's another story. Hi, Jez. Unfortunately, it needs the parents of these poor Southport girls to come on the TV to call Starmer out, that he must resign along with Cooper. Listen, there's loads of things that could and should happen. Jez, I'm a lifelong fan of yours. Thank you for speaking the truth. Common sense will prevail. Prevail. Samantha's in Dorchester. Chris is in Newbury. A man with a terrorist handbook who watched terrorist videos and made terrorist chemical weapons isn't a terrorist unless the police tell us he is, but people who suggest he was a Muslim terrorist are right-wing nuts. Chip Chapman truly thinks we are all stupid. We are not. We are onto it. 0344 499 1000. Our next guest, delighted to have him on, Robert Wiener, former spokesman for the Clinton and Bush White Houses. Robert, welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
Jeremy, thank you for having me. I love talking with you guys. Across the pond gets it right.
God bless you and God bless the golden age of America under Donald J. Trump. You must be one happy bunny. Come on, Robert.
No.
Oh, God,
the
man.
Washington Post said in this morning's headline, Trump's stark vision. It was quite a weird, again, a very negative kind of inauguration speech.
Come on, man. Negative. Robert, I love having you on, but what are you talking about? Let me tell you, you want to talk about negativity, come to this goddamn country. We've got a Prime Minister who's about as exciting, right, as a bowl of, I don't know, unfrozen ice cream. Donald Trump, like him or loathe him. Let me put this to you, right? I have genuinely said that there are some things that he says and does I do not in any way agree with, and I would never change that. But we talk all the time, on a serious note, Robert, about having your hand on the pulse of what the people, the electorate, want. And much as the bedwetters in this country, and I'm sure in America, can go, oh, Donald Trump's terrible. What he talked about yesterday is what a majority of American people want done. The end of this obsession with diversity. Base your job on merit. 2 sexes. Close the border. Look after the American people. Make them financially better off. What's wrong with that, Robert?
Well, he was elected not to buy Greenland, Panama, and Canada, but to buy groceries.
Yeah, but I knew you'd bring up Panama and Mars. Let me talk about... I knew you'd do that. But if you say to your average American, and I've lived there, you know that, if you say to the average American in middle America, you know, I've been to Columbus, Ohio, right? Let's be honest. Nice. If you say to the... It is about the cost of gas and it's the cost of your groceries. They're going to vote for you. They're not interested in ideology, are they?
Well, I'll tell you what, the vast majority of the American people don't want the rioters released, and every Republican senator and congressman who now are Trump's paddle boys, they all said how he was responsible for bringing them there, and 178 police were armed. They were injured, and 5 were killed, and he's letting them out. He's emptying the jails of the rioters, still being an election denier, which all the Republicans are saying, oh, that's fine. But it's not fine. It's not fine with the American people.
Was it fine? I'm going to sound like a politician. I love having you on. We're going to have a good old Barney. Is it right then? I'm not... Listen, I have my own feelings about that, and you might be right, you might not be. I like a lot of what he said. What I really like is your answer to this, which is the outgoing president, who patently didn't know what time it was, managed to pardon his entire family who haven't been accused of anything, which led me and many people across the world to go, what are they guilty of? Why would you pardon your own family before you leave the White House, for God's sake? And the committee who passed those sentences on January the 6th.
They were doing their job, and Biden made a point in a statement saying this does not say that you admit any guilt. That's what he stated was the condition of the pardon. So Harry Dunn, who emailed me, who was one of the police who was harmed and served, said that he was outraged and he accepted the pardon for protection. These people need protection from the vendetta of Pam Bondi, who clearly didn't know what she was talking about when she said he wouldn't do pardons of the violent ones, and Kash Patel, who has a list of people he wants to prosecute. So the vendetta and the vindictiveness has to be protected against, and that's what the pardons are for. And Trump is personal. He will go after Biden's family. And Trump should talk about family with the money he got to Jared, the billions from the Saudis, and Ivanka with her shoes and all of that. He's gonna talk about money for families? What gall?
He is the most powerful man in America. He's won back the popular vote. He completely destroyed the completely useless Kamala Harris, didn't he? And Joe Biden had to sit there and watch his legacy, I'm not sure what his legacy is, being destroyed. It was amazing theatre. It was amazing theatre.
Biden's a personal friend. I was at his house when he first ran for Senate, and he went by in an event, told my wife, Pat, I said I was at his house when he first ran for Senate, and he looked at her and he said, that's exactly right. I've known him forever. He's candid, but he did fade at the end. There's no question, and there's no question that in that debate he was absolutely terrible, and something had to be done. So it was done.
Can I ask you if you're a lifelong friend?
I don't disagree with you on that.
Let me ask you if you're a lifelong friend, because I've got a theory about Joseph Biden, right?
Uh-oh, here we go.
No. He spent most of yesterday smiling, and in fact, most of the last 7 weeks smiling. Now, a lot of people have written a lot of very cruel things, and I genuinely mean this, I'm quite angry with the people around him, including his family who propped him up, because I'm not interested in cover-up or no cover-up. I don't think that was fair to a man who gave 50 years of service, and that is me being completely straight. But I'm convinced he's been smiling, you'll love this, Robert, for the last 7 weeks, because he's just going to go to his grave going, I'm the only person that beat him. She was rubbish. You were all wrong. I beat him once. You can sod off. I'm going to retire now and sit on the beach. I'm convinced that's his theory now.
Well, I think you're right. I think that is his theory, and everybody has an ability to self-rationalize, and certainly he's doing it there. But he did do amazing things. He stopped a recession. He stopped a recession by putting money and programs and people out there when COVID was devastating everything. And the entire world's economists said there was going to be a recession, but Biden, by the trillions that he put into the economy, created the economy that is now powering the world. And you know that, and I know that, and Britain knows that.
I don't think Joe Biden
accomplished that.
I think your economy was better off under Donald Trump, genuinely, and I lived there.
He's the only president who lost jobs. He lost jobs during his.
He was the only president that you weren't. He was the only president you weren't in a war.
So Biden created 16 million jobs. 16 million. Clinton even only created, and everybody's been bragging about it, and he's good, 23 million in his 2 terms.
Why did the American public then absolutely get rid of Biden and Kamala Harris?
Because inflation at the end of Trump was 1.7. Then it jacked way up during COVID. Now it's back down to, instead of being in the 6s, 7s, and 8s, it's back down to 2.7. And that's not good enough for the price of butter and eggs. That's why. And that's a heck of a reason. The American people were short-sighted.
How can you tell me then that he saved the economy if inflation's higher than when Trump was in power? You told me he saved the economy, for God's sake, man.
He dropped it back down dramatically. People said that 3% was the mark and 5% was the mark in unemployment. He's got it down at 4%. So he absolutely accomplished a lot. And when Trump rides this wave of success, he's going to claim it was his when it was Biden that did it.
I will say this, though. I'm delighted you came on. We love the Barneys you and I have. But why are you wearing a Magda hat? You didn't look in the mirror. You've got a Magda hat on, man. What's the matter with you?
National Press Club, where we're coming to you live from.
Ah, lovely. Robert Weiner, former spokesman for Clinton and the Bush White Houses. We love having you on Talk Drive. 10 to 7.
now official government policy in America that biology is a fact. That's quite encouraging, isn't it?
Well, it is. And one of the things that came out was that if you are overseas right now and want to get back into America, and if your passport does not specify your actual correct biological sex, you have to get your passport reissued and you do not get to come back in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
About 7 minutes to 7. Good evening to Steve in East Yorkshire. Cooper stood in the Commons and called those involved in the Southport riots criminals. This was before anyone was arrested, charged and imprisoned. So did she prejudice their trials by saying that? Completely, I said it earlier. Starmer, Southport, Lorraine. There is no excuse for deliberately misleading the public. Starmer chose to actively lie to the public whilst knowing that there were terrorist links. Starmer chose deliberately to round up the far right for making tweets that we now know were truthful. He chose to deliberately let those people be sentenced to jail. He is dishonest and disgrace. He should resign and be disbarred from ever holding office again. Richard, my father-in-law is 75 and has been Labour member forever, and even he's ditched them and cancelled his membership. He would never hear a bad word of them. He is displeased to his core and has done a 180. Is it a 180 or 360? I get confused. The phone lines. Kent, Graham, you've literally got a minute and a half. Go.
I'm going to be very quick. I'll link a few things you've been talking about. Starmer showed no empathy when he went up to Southport. He just laid a reef.
Didn't speak to the victims' families, did he? You're absolutely right.
Not at all. And then his attitude in dealing with that started off a problem. I believe he was responsible for some of those rioters being very disgruntled and fed up. Let me say to you also that, today we've been talking about Trump. Trump is showing leadership. Starmer didn't. We've also talked about today about the NHS hospitals. When will Labour wake up and stop using the Tories as an excuse? They've got plenty of money to throw at a net zero, and they can't build hospitals for our public. That's rubbish. And I think if Kemi Badenoch doesn't drive a coach and horses through this guy a Prime Minister's question time tomorrow, then she's absolutely no good.
Drill, baby, drill. Graham in Kent, you're right. Thank you. Let's go to Michigan in the United States of America. Cindy, you're on Talk Drive. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jeremy. First of all, I want to thank you. You make me laugh and laugh. I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, I haven't even taken my clothes off and you're laughing. You've literally got a minute. What you got for me, Cindy? She's laughing again.
I wanted to say that I think that Trump's presidency is going to really put the pressure on Keir Starmer, because I think it's going to make him take English people seriously, because he needs to. And I think he's going to put the pressure on Keir Starmer.
I hope so.
Have a positive effect. I really believe that. I have a good feeling about this.
Just very quickly, from an American point of view, what was yesterday like?
Oh, my God, it was magical. It was fantastic, and I got goosebumps, too. I was, yelling at the TV, to Trump, yes!
What would you say to the people who said he's a convicted felon, women who say he's a rapist? What would you say to those people?
Give Trump a chance. Be logical. Give him a chance. He's going to get things done.
Very good to have you on, Cindy. Our love, thank you. In Michigan, final call today. Adam in Essex had so many. Literally, Ad, you got 1 minute. What you got?
Yeah, it's just a quick one, lads. I just think, Starmer's a hypocrite. He talks about protecting the children, and at the same time, he's stripping them of any future of careers, creativeness, entrepreneurial. The way he's going down with the country, I think he's got front to talk about protecting children, if I'm honest with you. On one hand, he's taking the futures away from them, and the other hand, he's got to sit there and talk about protecting them. I think it's just hypocrisy at its finest, to be honest with you.
And on a more basic level than that, to stand up and say, I want to protect children, and then to fervently and absolutely refuse to have a public inquiry into the rape gangs, whilst today accepting, quite rightly, there should be a public inquiry into Southport, smacks of one thing and one thing only. I'd love your response to this very quickly. Is he not having a public inquiry into the rape gangs? Loads of people have said because he's worried about losing a certain vote, the Muslim vote, in Labour constituencies if he makes those accusations.
Listen, the guy, I'll be honest, is scary. What's going on? For the first time in my life, I'm only 30 and I've got a young baby now, 10 months, and I'm scared of the future. I think he's a dangerous bloke, I really do.
You're very kind to come on. We wish you the best with your family. Adam in Essex, thank you very much indeed for listening. Bernie, Mike Graham, that was Jeremy Carr. One of the first things Trump did was to return the bust of Churchill back into the Oval Office. I think he should put photographs of Starmer in every public toilet. John, I'm absolutely gobsmacked that Yvette Cooper can stand up in Parliament and say buying a knife on Amazon is possible. Where the hell has she been for the last 2 decades? She and they are the parliamentarians, and they are the ones who bring in laws. I can't and you can't, Jeremy, but they can. So get on with it. You're a disgrace. He's here. Kevin O'Sullivan, you only got 40 seconds. What's happening?
What's all this nonsense about, it's terrible he could buy a knife online? Do you know what knife he had? It was a kitchen knife. He took it from his mum's kitchen.